Chapter 2841. However, Xiaohua did not expect the Kai family's ancestral shrine to be far beyond his expectations. How was this an ancestral shrine? It was even grander than the Xiankong Pavilion in Haoming City. Legacy realm? Suddenly, Xiaohua thought of the legacy realm of the Yu family in Falling Gold Mountain. Looking at this scene, the Qingyang Kai family must be the descendants of the divine beast Phoenix. Their ancestral shrine already had such a scene. Then what about the so-called legacy realm of the Yu family in Falling Gold Mountain? That was the legacy realm that was known as an interface. Could this be related to the legacy realm? Xiaohua's eyes turned and looked around. In addition to these ranks, there were also colorful lights. Fairy Xianxia's figure was lying in mid-air, and this posture was used when she was practicing the flying shadow technique. Seeing Xiaohua looking around, Li Zongbao hurriedly transmitted his voice. "Junior brother, let's go down. Don't delay junior sister's comprehension." As he spoke, he took the lead and walked a few steps in the air. There seemed to be invisible stairs in the air. Sure enough, Xiaohua also walked a few steps and was actually far away from Fairy Xianxia. Hence, the three of them simply walked a few miles before stopping. "Damn it," Xiao Mao was the first to speak. "This Kai family is really rich. How can their ancestral shrine be so big? When I was in Xuanyan school, I really underestimated these cultivation families." Indeed. Even someone as knowledgeable as Li Zongbao nodded and said, "If junior sister didn't bring me here, I would also think that the Kai family was just an ordinary family. Why is the Kai family's ancestral shrine in Million Mountain Meng? How can it have such a grand scene? This array. What kind of divine ability is needed to set it up?" Xiaohua asked a few questions in one breath. Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao looked at each other. Both of them had the same question in their hearts, but who could answer? "I only know that although this place is vast, its true size is no more than 50 kilometers. In fact, it's really the size of an ordinary clan's ancestral hall." Li Zongbao hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice. "However, there's an array here that's similar to the Meru array, and it's shrinking us. As for this totem, even though it's only the size of a hill, in our eyes, it's comparable to the entire Dawn Rain continent." Sumeru Formation? Xiao Mao was slightly taken aback. He asked curiously, "What kind of formation is that?" "Your storage pouch," Li Zongbao reminded. Many things, regardless of their size, can be stored in storage bags. This storage bag has a simple Sumeru array formation. So that's how it is. Xiao Mao came to a realization and looked around. "What about now? Are we inside the Phoenix Totem?" "It should be." Xiaohua nodded. That kind of extremely high-speed flight from before was like a teleportation array. When it reached a certain level, it teleported us into the Phoenix Totem. I've encountered such a powerful restriction before. However, he still had a lingering fear in his heart. But that huge suction force from the totem just now was really powerful. "I don't know how this restriction was formed." Unexpectedly, Li Zongbao's words stunned Xiaohua on the spot. "I'm afraid it's the totem's own suction force on us?" "Of course. This suction force doesn't have any fluctuations of energy. It's naturally formed. It could really be the suction force of the Phoenix Totem." A clear cry faintly rang out. In the distance, Fairy Hongxia's body flashed brilliantly, and the crystal-clear Phoenix celestial body was released. Instantly, even Xiaohua and the rest could see that countless fireflies were flying in from outside the space. They were like moths to a flame, and they all fell into Fairy Hongxia's celestial body. The celestial body immediately emitted the same brilliance as the Phoenix Totem outside the space. This brilliance was like breathing, and it was very uniform. More fireflies flew in, enveloping Fairy Hongxia's physical body and celestial body. An extremely beautiful cocoon of light was born around Fairy Hongxia's body. The brilliance continued to flash, and the fireflies continued to pour in. Very quickly, more than 10 days passed. The cocoon of light did not expand, but it gradually solidified. Xiaohua and the rest closed their eyes and sat quietly in the distance, waiting for Fairy Hongxia to emerge from the cocoon. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a sound like the rising and falling of the tide came from the cocoon of light. Cracks gradually appeared on the surface of the cocoon of light. These cracks rapidly expanded, and it collapsed rapidly. An extremely loud phoenix cry rang out again, as if there were two sounds at the same time. One was from the phoenix totem outside the space, and the other was from Fairy Xia's phoenix celestial body. Following the phoenix cry, the collapsing cocoon of light suddenly retracted, and the entire cocoon of light was hidden within Fairy Xia's physical body. At the same time, a five-colored brilliance flashed across the sky, and a firework flashed across the sky, landing right on top of the cocoon of light. Fairy Xia's body continued to flash, and all the brilliance gathered in between her eyebrows. A blood-red phoenix the size of a thumb, spreading its wings and about to fly, appeared there. Looking at the sparkling and translucent phoenix celestial body, it had returned to its original state. The five-colored phenomenon from before had disappeared, and it looked the same as before. Moreover, the celestial body had shrunk to the size of 6 feet. Fairy Xianxia chuckled and looked up. She opened her mouth, and the five-colored brilliance fell into her mouth. Her body did not move, but with a flap of the phoenix celestial body's wings, she immediately flew to the side of Xiaohua and the rest at lightning speed. My goodness, Senior Sister flew too fast. Xiao Mao and the rest had already stood up when they heard the commotion. Xiao Mao could not help but exclaim in shock. I have obtained the phoenix legacy of my Kai family. I can move freely within the phoenix enchantment. Fairy Xianxia said proudly. Good. Li Zongbao clapped. Congratulations, junior sister, for not making a wasted trip. Thank you, senior brother. It's all because of your help that I can come here safely. Fairy Xianxia bowed and thanked him. What is the phoenix legacy? Can every descendant of the Kai family obtain it? Xiaohua asked curiously. Not at all, Fairy Xianxia chuckled. Just like junior brother Xiao Mao, if one's bloodline is not pure, how can one obtain it? Or if one's cultivation does not reach a certain level, how can one enter the ancestral shrine? Moreover, my Kai family's phoenix legacy should be different from junior brother's, who is the descendant of God Shibai. This phoenix legacy can only be obtained by one person in every generation. Only when this person dies, will the inheritance divine light return to the ancestral shrine and await the arrival of the next inheritor. So amazing. Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He looked at Xiao Mao and then at Fairy Xianxia. These two people's luck seemed to be better than his. They really had a good background. Better than anyone else. Actually, I don't know about all these. Fairy Xianxia smiled. I only wanted to come to the ancestral shrine to see if there were any opportunities. Only when I was guided by the Phoenix Legacy's divine light and merged with the Phoenix Legacy did I understand so much. Moreover, within the divine light, there are many other things which will be slowly unearthed as I cultivate. Senior Sister's cultivation. Xiao Mao could not help but cast a spell. However, Fairy Xia's cultivation did not seem to have any special changes. Of course, my cultivation won't have any changes in a dozen days. Fairy Xia smiled. These 10 days are only the initial stages of merging with the divine light. When the divine light completely merges with me, my cultivation will gradually speed up. However, based on my estimation, I will definitely be able to step into the golden core stage by next year. As she spoke, Fairy Xia opened her mouth, and the 5-colored brilliance flew out and landed in her soft hands. The brilliance gradually disappeared, revealing the true form of a phoenix feather. This is my Kai family's phoenix token. Fairy Xia said happily. This is a feather that my ancestors obtained from the heavenly phoenix. Its profundity is endless. Congratulations, senior sister. Xiao Mao said happily. Everyone's luck is different. Junior brother's fate seems to be more powerful than mine. Fairy Xia held the phoenix token and said, I thought that coming to Meng Mountains was my business, but I did not expect that. Junior brother's business is more important than mine. She then looked at Xiaohua and Li Zongbao and said embarrassedly. On the other hand, Xiao Lang and senior brother came empty-handed and returned empty-handed. As long as you have a chance encounter, wouldn't you be much stronger than me? Xiaohua naturally understood that what he had obtained was not any less than Xiao Mao and Fairy Xia. He smiled and said, Senior brother Li, on the other hand, came here for nothing. Not at all. I even obtained a spirit item. Li Zongbao said. At this moment, the space began to vibrate. A repulsive force similar to the one before was produced. Don't worry, The Phoenix barrier is about to close.
Fairy Xianxia said unhurriedly. Only when my Phoenix divine light returns will the Phoenix barrier have a chance to open.
We don't need to struggle, we just need to let the barrier push us out. As soon as her voice fell, everyone's figures soared into the sky, flying out at a speed even faster than Xiaohua's imperial thundershock. Only this time, there were no sparks forming around them. Xiaohua hurriedly closed his eyes, trying to comprehend the rare speed. GG. After an unknown amount of time, an extremely hot aura suddenly surrounded Xiaohua. Moreover, before Xiaohua could open his eyes, a very familiar sound of an ape's cry came from above his head. Then, an unpleasant stench rushed into Xiaohua's mouth and nose. This is... Xiaohua stared blankly. Before he could open his eyes and release his divine sense, a sharp sound that seemed to tear the air apart resounded from his forehead, and a piercing pain appeared on his skin. Xiaohua's body was naturally surrounded by a protective golden light, but he did not dare to be careless. He shrank his head and curled his body into a ball. In an extremely strange posture, he flew to the side like a spinning windmill. Chapter 2842. Rip! An ear-piercing sound of silk being torn apart rang out. An extremely sharp force slashed right at Xiaohua's right arm. Wherever the brilliance flashed, the golden light protecting his body was actually torn apart by this force, and the brilliance surrounding Xiaohua's body was also extinguished. Fire ape! Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He immediately activated the wind escape technique, and floated several zhang away. His gaze swept across, and sure enough, he saw 100 zhang tall fire ape. This fire ape had an extremely ferocious face, and the wide mouth and fangs on its face were suffused with a kind of blood-red color. The fire ape's fur was golden yellow, and from time to time, flames would emerge from its fur, lingering around the fire ape. A tyrannical aura also enveloped the nearby area. Wasn't this the golden core stage fire ape from Flaming Forest Marsh? Why did this guy run to Million Man Mountain? Xiaohua stood in mid-air. He swept with his divine sense, but didn't see the figures of Li Zongbao and the others. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. His gaze once again fell on the fire ape, and he thought very strangely. Looking at the fire ape again, within its wild and untamed eyes, there was clearly astonishment, as if it was as confused as Xiaohua. However, when it clearly saw Xiaohua's appearance, a kind of joy actually appeared in its eyes. Oh! A cheerful long howl, its bloody mouth rushed into the air, and a faint flame spurted out. Immediately after, it crossed its arms and hammered its own chest, causing sparks to fly out from its fur, as if they were blooming fireworks. Sun Moon Corona. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. He immediately thought of the ancestral artifacts of Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge. Those things seemed to have a restraining effect on the fire ape, and at the same time, the fire ape seemed to be somewhat interested in the Sun Moon Corona. However, before Xiaohua could take out the Sun Moon Corona, the fire ape not far away lowered its head, and stared at Xiaohua with a fierce gaze. Flames flickered under its feet, and it flew towards Xiaohua. Its huge fists streaked across the air, and flames were also produced. It was like 2 fireballs were held in the fire ape's hand, and it rushed towards Xiaohua. Ha ha ha, I've already met you 3 times. Xiaohua laughed loudly. As the saying goes, there's only 1 time and 2 times, but not 3 times and 4 times. Now, I'll let you know how powerful I am. As he spoke, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out several fire talismans. He urged his magic power and threw them at the fire ape. Roar! The fire ape seemed to have understood Xiaohua's words. It let out a loud roar and a trace of disdain flashed through its eyes. Its giant hand was like a mountain as it smashed down toward Xiaohua, who was like a toy in its eyes. Rumble. The fire talisman itself didn't have much magic power fluctuation. When Xiaohua activated it, this time, it absorbed a huge amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth. One after another, huge fireballs exploded around the fire ape. That ferocious force and the fierce flames all rolled towards the fire ape. Boom, boom, boo! The fire ape was clearly somewhat surprised, but there was no panic in its eyes. The fist that was smashing towards Xiaohua changed slightly. It hammered continuously, like the beating of a drum, and hit the numerous fireballs. The fireball talismans, which even swordsmen would find difficult to dodge, were actually destroyed by the fire ape as if they were playing with fire. The last fireball was even destroyed by the fire ape's palm. Ha ha! It's indeed the fire ape. This fire-controlling technique is innate. Ordinary people can only look up to its dust. Xianxia sighed. He boasted that he already had some understanding of the divine fire technique, but in terms of fire-controlling technique, he was clearly inferior to this fire ape. He didn't have the confidence that he could easily crush the fire talismans when they exploded.
Roar! The fire ape cracked open its mouth, as if it was mocking and showing off.
It waved its hands and a series of fireballs were born from its hands. It threw them towards Xianxia as if it was playing with fire. Xianxia saw the mocking in the fire ape's eyes and his heart was also stunned.
Without thinking, he waved his hand and dozens of fire talismans once again flew out.
Rumble! The fire talismans exploded between Xianxia and the fire ape. The flames soared into the sky and enveloped the surrounding area of 100 zhang. The shockwave even stirred up the dust within 100 zhang. There were even some mountain rocks that were blown away by the fireballs. The entire scene was a complete mess. Roar! This time, the fire ape was completely enraged. It used all its strength to open its bloody mouth and its teeth made a ga sound.
With a loud roar, its 10 zhang tall body slightly swayed and actually flashed within the flames.
It quickly rushed in front of Xianxia and its huge fist smashed towards Xiaohua's body with the sound of the wind. Fire escape! Xianxia was even more stunned. This was the first time the fire ape used the fire escape in front of him. Even that day in the flame forest swamp, it didn't use it when it was in a dangerous situation. It seemed that the fire ape's strength had greatly improved in these past few decades. However, when Xianxia saw the fire ape approaching him, he was not afraid at all. With a wave of his hand, he took out his enormous spiked club. With a woo sound, he welcomed the fire ape's fist head-on. Suddenly seeing the huge wolf-tooth club, the fire ape was also slightly stunned. Looking at Xianxia waving the wolf-tooth club that was bigger than itself like a baby, it was really frightened.
A loud sound echoed.
While the fire ape was still in a daze, the wolf-tooth club hit its fist. The fire ape's fist was shaken and the magic tool wolf-tooth club also let out a ZZ sound. The fire ape lowered its head and looked at its fist in disbelief. Soon after, it raised its head and its eyes were already scarlet red. Roar! Roar! The fire ape roared 3 times and waved its arms as if it was angry. The flames around its body also suddenly rushed out and attacked Xiaohua's head.
Come!
How could Xiaohua be afraid of it? He roared without fear and waved his wolf-tooth club. His body flew up and fought with the fire ape. A deafening roar sounded and flames splashed around the surroundings. Not to mention the rocks, even the dust was refined by the fire ape's flames and turned into pitch-black beads that rolled around. The mess on the rocks was also the remnants of the flames. Furthermore, countless large holes were left behind by the fire ape's fists or by Xiaohua's wolf-tooth club. After fighting for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Fairy Xianxia and the rest still didn't appear. Instead, the fire ape's roars became even louder. The fire ape wasn't proficient in controlling fire and its arms had a huge strength that could tear apart tigers and leopards. In this kind of close combat, other than in a group fight, it had never suffered such a big loss. Now that it saw a cultivator who was much shorter than it and was actually in a deadlock with it, it had long lost its rationality. Its eyes were abnormally scarlet red and it opened its bloody mouth that emitted a disgusting stench, as if it would only be satisfied if it ate Xiaohua alive. Pow! Xiaohua's figure was like a light wind and flew out from under the fire ape's armpit. He didn't even turn his head and casually swung his wolf-tooth club, smashing it on the fire ape's back. Although the fire ape's skin was thick and its body was protected by flames, when sparks flew, the fire ape's figure actually staggered and fell forward. However, the fire ape actually took advantage of this moment and lifted its foot, as if it wanted to stomp Xiaohua into meat paste. Go! Xiaohua didn't hesitate and raised the wolf-tooth club in his hand, hitting it on the fire ape's foot. Ayo! The fire ape let out a sorrowful cry, as if it was in pain. It hugged its foot and fell in mid-air. This fire ape is quite interesting. Xiaohua was somewhat hypocritical, however, it's too arrogant and unruly. Woo! Immediately after, the fire ape pounded its own chest and opened its mouth. A turbulent pillar of fire rushed out from its mouth and enveloped Xiaohua. Ha ha ha, you want to compete with this young master in fire techniques? Xiaohua laughed loudly. The wolf-tooth club in his hand disappeared after a pause. Immediately after,
He opened his mouth and spat out a cold flame, like a fire net, to meet the fire ape's attack.
Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The two types of fire fused together. However, Xiaohua's cold flame only lasted for a moment before it was broken by many thin flames. It was as if thousands of small fire snakes were licking Xiaohua's left side. "Io, this fire ape is really powerful." Xiaohua faintly smiled.
With a wave of his hand, he took out the magic bottle that contained the innate true fire.
This magic bottle couldn't be considered a high-grade item, and Xiaohua didn't really refine it. At this moment, he activated his magic power and a wisp of innate true fire flickered within the magic bottle. Immediately after, a suction force was produced and the fire ape's pillar of fire was sucked into it, leaving not even a drop behind. Woo woo! A trace of astonishment flashed through the fire ape's scarlet eyes. It seemed to have seen the power of the innate true fire. However, at this moment, it was already controlled by anger. It opened its bloody mouth again, and an unconcealable confinement force was produced from its mouth. Immediately after, the fire ape spat out a fiery red Niden from its mouth. The situation of this Niden was different from the first time the fire ape appeared. When the Niden was spat out in the air, the surrounding dozens of feet was enveloped by a kind of pressure. A faint confinement force was emitted from this pressure, and traces of sparks were faintly discernible within this range of dozens of feet. Woo! A strange hissing sound was produced from the Niden. An enormous force mixed with extreme heat was emitted from the Niden at the same time and smashed toward Xiaohua. "Come at me!" Xiaohua slapped his forehead and released the pressure of the gold core to contend with the might of the Niden. At the same time, he waved his hand and took out the seal of overturning the sea. However, when Xiaohua activated the seal of overturning the sea, his heart shook and the seal of overturning the sea disappeared from his hand. Xiaohua raised his hand and slapped his forehead again. Immediately, a hurricane was produced from his forehead. That hurricane was so sharp that it was like wind blades, cutting apart the confinement of the Niden within dozens of feet. Moreover, in the air, the faintly discernible wisps of fire were blown away like candles in the wind, on the verge of collapse. What's more, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within hundreds of feet of Xiaohua condensed in the direction of Xiaohua. The huge rocks and dust that were shattered by the fight between the two were all swept up by this hurricane. The hand of a nascent soul. Chapter 2843. Previously, when Xiaohua was in the sword tomb, he had occasionally revealed his nascent soul stage hand. However, at that time it was not too mature. It could even be said that he only had a little bit of experience. During this period of time, although Xiaohua hadn't used it again, he had always been thinking about it in his heart. He had always been trying to comprehend it. With a heaven and earth sleeve as a foundation, although this nascent soul hand might not be pure, when he really used it now, it was quite decent. The hurricane mixed with the gravel and sand condensed into a huge palm. It was as if a real huge hand was grabbing towards the inner core. A restraining force that could compete with or even surpass the restraining force of the inner core was born from the hand. Although it hadn't really grasped the inner core, the previously ferocious golden core had now lost all its momentum under the giant hand. The previously spiraling golden core had become sluggish, and it didn't even move in the air. Ayo! At this moment, the fire ape's crimson eyes became somewhat clear. A trace of panic flashed through it. It really could not understand why Xiaohua, who it had met once before, was so powerful now. The fire ape roared angrily. The crimson inner core suddenly flashed with a circle of intense brilliance. Even though Xiaohua was far away, he still felt an indescribable heat. The nascent soul stage hand that was covering the inner core was immediately burned by this heat and dissipated. Powerful, Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He hurriedly flung his Taoist robe, wanting to use the heaven and earth sleeve technique to stabilize the nascent soul stage hand. At this moment, the fire ape's inner core suddenly retreated and fell into the fire ape's mouth. Moreover, the fire ape did not hesitate at all. Flames flashed under its feet, and it prepared to escape into the distance. Hee, at this time you still want to leave? Xiaohua sneered. His figure swayed, and lightning flashed under his feet as he chased after the fire ape. Roar! The fire ape did not expect Xiaohua's flying speed to be so fast. In a moment, he had already arrived behind it. It hurriedly roared, and that roar shook the surroundings, echoing in the mountains. Eh! Hearing the fire ape's cry and the fire ape's anxious expression, Xiaohua suddenly had a bad feeling. Damn it, this fire ape is so strange. The first time I saw it in Flaming Forest Swamp, it was with the Thunder Beast. It seemed like it was the one who lured the Thunder Beast here. But today, it actually came all the way to the Meng Mountains. Could it be that there are still Thunder Beasts here?
Just as he was thinking about it, a spiritual sense comparable to that of a nascent soul cultivator swept over, and a hoarse voice rang out from afar.
No way! As that divine sense swept past Xiaohua, a scorching and ferocious feeling spread out from that divine sense, causing Xiaohua's divine sense to feel a stinging pain. What kind of spirit beast is this? How can it be so powerful?
When the fire ape sensed this divine thought, it let out a loud cry of joy and flew towards the source of the sound without caring about anything else.
Humph, even if another lightning beast comes, you can forget about escaping from my hands. Xiaohua knew that this fire ape had some connection with the Misty Mountain. The powerful restriction in the Sun-Moon Corona most likely needed this fire ape, and the soul seal inside had to be unsealed for Shui. How could Xiaohua release this fire ape? While thinking, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the Sun-Moon Corona appeared in his hand. Ayo! An extremely sorrowful cry was heard. As soon as the Sun-Moon Corona appeared, it was sensed by the fire ape.
The fire ape turned its head to look at the Sun-Moon Corona, which was overflowing with brilliance, and immediately let out a cry, fleeing even more desperately.
Go! Xiaohua urged his magic power, and the Sun-Moon Corona within the Sun-Moon Corona rotated like a sun, and the Sun-Moon Corona rotated around the Sun-Moon Corona in the opposite direction. The Sun-Moon Corona was incomparably brilliant as it chased after the fire ape. In the blink of an eye, the Sun-Moon Corona caught up with the fire ape. Woo! A powerful suction force was generated from the Sun-Moon Corona, enveloping the fire ape. Withdraw, Xiaohua faintly smiled. The Sun-Moon Corona let out a buzzing sound, and the entire magic artifact shook. The suction force was like waves, rushing towards the fire ape's head. Ayo! The fire ape raised its hand high up, covering its head. Its facial features were all distorted, and it felt extreme pain. A faintly discernible fire shadow appeared on top of the fire ape's head, gradually moving towards the Sun-Moon Corona. See! A hoarse cry was heard, and the divine sense in the distance became even more furious. Xiaohua felt as if the air around him was about to be ignited, and a kind of dryness that he had never experienced before gradually emerged from the bottom of his heart. Xiaohua did not dare to release his divine sense, and raised his head to look. Right at the origin of the sound, a 3-zhang tall monster with a body full of red fur was flying towards him on a red cloud. This monster was very strange. It seemed to have the shape of a human, but the movements of its limbs were very stiff, and its arms and legs did not seem to be able to bend. What puzzled Xiaohua the most was that this monster's entire body was covered in red fur. The fine fur covered the monster's entire body, and not a single bit of skin was exposed. Moreover, there was a layer of fine powdery substance on top of the red fur, and it faintly emitted a phosphorescent light. This body hair was so luxuriant that it actually completely covered the monster's face, and its appearance could not be seen clearly. Only a pair of eyes could be seen through the gaps of the fur. This is a human? Or a soul beast? Xiaohua thought inwardly, but his gaze once again fell on the monster's 2 enormous breasts. Those enormous breasts were no different from an ordinary girl's breasts, but they were much bigger. Ayo! When Xiaohua saw this monster, the fire ape naturally also saw it. A heart-wrenching roar came from the fire ape's mouth, and it was asking for help. See, that monster also raised its head and roared, but its voice was not as loud as the fire ape's. However, Xiaohua could still hear that soft voice. As the monster's voice entered his ears, Xiaohua's mind slightly shook, and his vision became a little blurry. Good boy, Xiaohua was greatly alarmed, and he hurriedly used God's guidance. A strand of coolness flowed through his mind, and the thirst of his divine sense was somewhat alleviated, but his mind was still a little shaky. Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent, and he hurriedly released his soul strands to block the monster's attack. The soul strands vibrated freely, blocking the monster's attack. Looking at the fire ape again, the silhouette of the fire ape that had been sucked out earlier gradually returned to its original position, and its body that was tumbling in the air also stopped. Humph, you still want to leave at this time? Even if this young master does not take your life, I will not let you go. Xiaohua sneered, and pointed his finger. A few words of incantation came out, and the brilliance of the sun-moon corona changed again. The sun-moon corona gradually shrunk, and the sun-moon corona flattened, turning into something similar to a Dao crown. Go! Xiaohua pointed his finger again, and a wave of magic power surged. With a so sound, the Dao crown landed on the fire ape's head. The fire ape was greatly alarmed, and its 2 claws grabbed the sides of the Dao crown, exerting all its strength to take it away from its head. Tight, the corner of Xiaohua's mouth rose into a slight smile. This sun-moon corona method was something that he obtained when he was refining it. At that time, he did not know what use it had, but today, he found out that it actually had such a miraculous use. Roar! A deafening roar came out from the fire ape's mouth. The pain on the fire ape's face was even more intense than before, and its entire body fell to the ground in midair. Its 2 claws rapidly scratched its head, and traces of blood seeped out. It was actually the fire ape's claws that had scratched it. However, that Dao crown seemed to have taken root on its head. No matter how it struggled, even if it used its head to hit the ground, that Dao crown did not move in the slightest. Boom! A light sound rang out, and a flame flashed above Xiaohua's head. It was as if the true fire within Xiaohua's body had uncontrollably erupted. Moreover, an incomparable impatience suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart, and a kind of pressure that came from the inside out was about to explode. Xiaohua did not have time to deal with the fire ape. He raised his head to look again, and this time, he was truly stunned. Right next to the monster, hundreds and thousands of soul beasts suddenly appeared, and on the backs of these soul beasts stood soul warriors. Damn it, this fire ape is really a genius. Xiaohua could not help but praise in his heart. Previously, you were together with the incomparably powerful thunder beast in Flame Forest Swamp, and now you've come all the way to Million Miles Mountain, and even become friends with this monster and soul beasts. If this young master really killed you, it would be a waste of my talent. Xiaohua did not have the confidence to deal with this monster, and he did not want to fight against a soul warrior. His body quickly descended, and with a wave of his hand, the universe in the sleeve was unleashed, and in an instant, the fire ape was imprisoned. Under the double imprisonment of the sun-moon corona and the universe in the sleeve, the fire ape only had the strength to tear apart tigers and leopards, and the ability to control true fire. Now, like a dead animal, it was lifted up by Xiaohua. Xiaohua then took out a spirit pouch and threw the fire ape into it. After easily dealing with the fire ape, Xiaohua glanced at the monster that was still some distance away from him. That monster's limbs were stiff, and it flew rather slowly. Xiaohua might not be able to fight against this monster's strange ability, but it seemed that escaping from the monster and the soul warrior's eyes was not a difficult matter. However, seeing the numerous soul warriors flying over from all over the mountains and plains, Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. Oh, not good. Where are my wife and the others? Thinking of this, Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent, and released his divine sense. Who would have thought that just as Xiaohua released his divine sense, a feeling of being thrown into an oven immediately came over from his divine sense. The surroundings seemed to be filled with waves of fire, and the indescribable fire was burning. The needles forced Xiaohua to have no choice but to withdraw his divine sense. However, his Buddhist sense, which had always been useful, was also forced to withdraw by the fire. Moreover, his Buddhist sense was not as good as his divine sense, and there was actually a burning sensation. What is this monster? Xiaohua was stunned. He knew that the Million Meng Mountains were mysterious, and that it was a place that Taoist cultivators did not dare to enter. However, he still did not expect that even though they were not even in the depths of the Million Meng Mountains, and were still in the Kai family's ancestral shrine, with his strength comparable to a nascent soul cultivator, he was unable to deal with a monster that he had not even seen before. This won't do. Even if my cultivation is damaged, I still have to find my wife and the others' whereabouts. Xiaohua was very anxious. His figure rose into the sky, and he released his divine sense again. Chapter 28:44. It was really like a naked man jumping into a lake of fire. Ever since Xiaohua started cultivating, he had suffered a lot. Lightning tribulation, body sculpting, bone tempering, 10,000 years of solitude, etc. However, it seemed that he could not avoid those sufferings. He was forced to face them. But this time was different. He could have retracted his divine sense. Perhaps everything would be fine. Perhaps he could have escaped this hellish suffering. However, Xiaohua did not dare to retract his divine sense.
He understood that with his poor sense of direction, he would lose track of Fairy Xianxia and the others as soon as he flew up. He could only go further and further away, and he would never be able to find them.
Xiaohua could only rely on his divine sense. Ordinary people would not be able to understand the feeling of falling into a lake of fire. Even if their hands touched the flames, they would be burned. How could ordinary people reach their hands into the flame again? Although it was possible to pull chestnuts out of the fire, the process was extremely short. How could it be compared to Xiaohua's torment of jumping into the fire? That deep pain would occasionally pierce his divine sense. It was as if thousands of sharp needles were constantly attacking Xiaohua. Roar! Xiaohua roared, as if he wanted to roar out the pain. He did not dare to stay in the air for long. Lightning flickered around his body as he flew towards the monster. Rumble! Xiaohua's hands danced in the air as if he had gone crazy. The dark clouds in the sky surged rapidly, gradually accumulating. Dozens of lightning bolts struck down like sharp swords. All the lightning bolts had only one target, and that was the flying monster. Hiss! The monster saw the change in the sky and stopped in mid-air. It looked at the sky with great astonishment, then looked at Xiaohua. When the lightning struck, the monster's body immediately landed on top of a hill. Strangely, the hillside was the same as the other places. Because of the changes in Meng Mountains, there was no vegetation growing on it. It looked like it was filled with rocks and dust. However, when the monster's feet stepped on the hillside, an indescribable yellow color appeared under the monster's feet and rapidly spread across the entire hillside. Cracks quickly appeared on the hard boulders, and after a lot of cracks, they turned into powder. It was as if the monster had absorbed the last bit of moisture on the hillside. Hiss! Xiaohua clearly saw this strange scene and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He was immediately stunned, as if he had thought of something. Hidorigami! This is a drought demon! Xiaohua suddenly cried out in shock. Once the drought demon appears, the land will be dyed red for thousands of miles. Damn it! Could this drought demon be the cause of the abnormal changes in Meng Mountains? No, that's not right. The drought demon was born because of the change in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Rumble! Xiaohua's cry was really effective. The pain in his divine sense actually lessened a little. Xiaohua naturally didn't dare to be negligent. His body turned into a bolt of lightning and rapidly flew toward a place, wanting to get away from this drought demon. Hiss hiss! The place where the lightning fell was precisely the standing drought demon. The threads of lightning, and the flickering lightning net all fell. However, the drought demon raised both of its hands slightly, as if it was raising fire to burn the sky. Countless lightning bolts fell on its body, causing it to fall to the ground. However, when the drought demon stood up very tenaciously, Xiaohua discovered that these heavenly lightning actually only knocked down some red hair and didn't hurt the drought demon in the slightest. Isn't this a little too powerful? Xiaohua's eyeballs were about to fall out. Although he knew that the drought demon had a head of copper and arms of iron, and that its entire body was hard, but he didn't expect it to be this hard. Wu Hanba let out a rare cry. Xiaohua's entire body made a whoosh sound, as if it was about to explode. A splitting sensation emerged from his skull. Furthermore, that divine sense that was originally already covered in burns was actually cleaved apart by a kind of sharpness that was like a fiery sword. Motherfucker, how long has it been? My divine sense was already injured by the drought demon. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He still stubbornly released his divine sense, continuing to sweep towards the distance. At this moment, the previously distant soul beasts were also flying closer. These soul beasts' bodies had some faint green brilliance. These green brilliances intertwined with each other, covering half the sky. Xiaohua's divine sense swept across some of these green brilliances, and a cool feeling entered his body. It was very pleasant. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment before the green brilliance began to corrode Xiaohua's divine sense, burning even more fiercely than the fire. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed angrily. He didn't want to get caught up in a fight with these soul warriors. His figure slightly turned, and he flew towards the side of the soul warriors. Unexpectedly, when they saw Xiaohua fly away, those soul warriors acted as if they didn't know.
They continued to chase in the direction they came from, which was the direction where the drought demon fell. Moreover, because the drought demon was now flying and chasing after Xianxia, it even waved the soul weapon in its hand, causing a sky full of green brilliance to pounce towards the drought demon.
Oh, I understand now. Xianxia suddenly realized, these millions of Meng Mountain soul cultivators are here to kill the drought demon. They're not here to help the drought demon save the fire ape. However, soon after, Xianxia was stunned. But, how can these soul cultivators kill the drought demon? But at this moment, Xianxia's divine sense seemed to have discovered something.
His face changed greatly, and a surge of anger involuntarily rose from the bottom of his heart. His divine sense retracted in a sorry state, and the lightning around his body flickered as he flew into the distance.
It was actually the imperial lightning transformation that Xianxia rarely used.
Rumble, Xianxia wasn't the only one flying.
The dark clouds and lightning that had gathered in the sky earlier were also surging with Xianxia into the distance. It seemed like Xianxia's anger was soaring to the heavens. And the drought demon that was chasing after Xianxia was also chasing after him. Because the drought demon had changed direction, it ran into the soul warriors. The green brilliance that blotted out the sky and covered the earth was like a gigantic tentacle that grabbed at the drought demon.
Hiss! The drought demon's eyes that were covered by its red hair revealed a look of anger.
It stretched out its hand and grabbed at the air a few times. A scorching heat comparable to the hand of a nascent soul cultivator shot up into the air.
Hiss!
The green brilliance of the drought demon melted in an instant, as if the green brilliance was being washed away by a flood.
Roar! The dozen or so soul warriors that were closest to the drought demon waved the soul weapons in their hands. The soul beasts under their feet also spat out a green brilliance, and an obscure wave of energy enveloped the drought demon. Huff!
Seemingly hit by the soul warriors, the drought demon shook its head slightly and opened its mouth to roar at the soul warriors. Woo. Seeing this, the soul warriors were overjoyed. They roared to each other and urged their soul beasts to gather even more soul warriors to attack.
And the soul incantations in their mouths were rapidly recited, wanting to launch a fatal attack on the drought demon.
Seeing so many soul warriors blocking its way, and even more so, becoming more and more difficult to deal with like flies, the drought demon lost its last bit of patience. Looking at Xianxia's already disappearing figure, it opened its mouth to roar again and stretched out its hand to grab. Bang bang bang, a series of explosions rang out. Several soul warriors that were in the middle of reciting soul incantations and urging their soul beasts to attack the drought demon inexplicably exploded. All of their flesh and blood scattered down like powder. And the soul beasts they were riding also fell from the sky. The remaining soul cultivators were somewhat scared. It seemed that after chasing for half a day, only now did they realize how powerful the drought demon was. Unfortunately, how could the attack of over 1,000 people be so easily stopped? The soul warriors behind these soul warriors continued to urge their soul beasts to chase after the drought demon. Soul incantations were also released. Pa 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 pa. A series of sounds rang out. It was like swatting flies. One after another, the soul warriors' flesh and blood exploded, and one after another, their soul beasts fell from the sky. Even the soul warriors who didn't notice before instinctively heard it. After all, this wasn't a fight with swordsmen. This was a one-sided massacre. These soul warriors were simply no match for the drought demon.
Roar! The drought demon opened its mouth and laughed.
All of the soul warriors were so scared that they urged their soul beasts to retreat. The scene was like a rising tide forcing itself to retreat. It was quite a spectacular sight. The drought demon ignored these soul warriors and continued to fly in the direction of Xianxia. It seemed that the fire ape was very important to it. The remaining soul warriors stood in the sky for a moment. Seeing no trace of Yi Yu and Ho Yen, they looked at each other and urged their soul beasts to chase after the drought demon again. But this time, they only dared to stay far away. Activating the green defensive brilliance, no one dared to fly half a step. Where did Yi Yu and Ho Yen go? When the two of them were killing the drought demon, they naturally commanded the soul warriors to attack. However, the drought demon didn't want to fight them and they couldn't kill it. Originally, they chased after the drought demon to see if they could find any opportunities. The direction the drought demon went was naturally where the fire ape was, and this place wasn't far from the mountain peak where Xiao Mao put down Xianxia and the two blue witch feathers. Hundreds or even thousands of soul beasts flew past. Xianxia might not have known, But Jianghu you already knew. The two soul beasts didn't have any intelligence. They just flapped their wings and flew into the air, leaving Xianxia jumping and shouting on the mountain peak. Yi Yu and Hou Yan were both wise people. After seeing the power of the drought demon, they knew that this trip was a failure. However, Hou Yan couldn't just turn back. He sent his subordinates back and continued to mobilize the other soul warriors while continuing to chase after the drought demon. Yi Yu, on the other hand, had already achieved his goal. He wasn't afraid to follow behind Hou Yan. While they were quietly discussing how to deal with the drought demon, the blue witch feathers had already flown close to them. At first, Yi Yu didn't care. The blue witch feathers were just ordinary soul beasts in the millions of Meng Mountains. Who knew where these two soul beasts came from? But 7 was different. He thought about it for a while and figured it out. He knew that Xiao Mao had saved the soul beast in the Bai and stronghold. Although he didn't know that Xiao Mao had brought 2 soul beasts with him, how could 2 soul beasts suddenly appear in such a barren place? 7 hurriedly reported this to Yi Yu. Yi Yu was a calculative person. Once he was reminded, he immediately understood. He was overjoyed and asked for help from Hou Yan. Chapter 28:45. Hou Yan, who was still troubled, frowned even more when he heard this. In fact, he really didn't want to get involved in the matters of Shi Bai stronghold, especially such a sensitive matter. Although he agreed to help because he wanted something, there was still a sense of evasiveness in his bones. He didn't believe that in such a big Meng Mountains, he would really run into Xiao Mao this time. However, things were often so coincidental. When they really ran into each other, Hou Yan couldn't refuse anymore. He could only send his disciples to continue chasing Hamba, while he led over 100 spirit warriors and followed Yi Yu's 10 trusted subordinates to change direction. After all, the green witch feather was just an ordinary soul beast. How could it be as psychic as a soul beast commanded by a spirit warrior? After circling around, they slowly returned to the mountain peak where Xianxia was. Xianxia obviously didn't know the origin of these people. When it saw so many spirit warriors coming, it quickly stood up and bowed. However, no matter how Yi Yu and Hou Yan asked, Xianxia didn't reveal Xiao Mao's whereabouts. Hou Yan was helpless and didn't say much, but how could Yi Yu let it go? He only nodded slightly, and Achi immediately walked out and cut off one of Xianxia's arms, letting the blood flow out like a fountain. When Xianxia saw Xiao Mao before, it had already fainted from hunger. Now that it was severely injured, it couldn't stand and fell to the ground. Its blood soaked the dried mountain rocks. Seeing that Xianxia still refused to speak, Achi summoned his flying sword and sliced off the flesh on Xianxia's other arm piece by piece. Xianxia, who had gritted his teeth and remained silent, couldn't help but cry out in pain. His voice was so shrill that even the 2 green witch feathers cried out in shock in midair. Xianxia's last arm was almost cut into bones, but Achi still didn't ask why. Under Achi's torture, Xianxia only had 1 breath left to struggle. Achi didn't dare to casually kill Xianxia without Yi Yu's orders. Even Hou Yan, who had never regarded the lives of the Aborigines as lives, frowned when he saw such cruel means. Ahem. Hou Yan coughed and said unhappily, Fu Man, although this Aborigine is a lowly person, he is still a citizen of Meng Mountain. It's fine if you killed him, but to torture him in front of your little brother, isn't that inappropriate? Night Rain was naturally angry. He didn't expect this native to be so stubborn. This native showed him the loyalty of the natives to the descendants of Shi Bai. Hearing Hou Yan's words, he said faintly, Brother Hou Yan, this is the internal affair of our Shi Bai village. The untouchables here are my people. I am the Fu Man of the Shi Bai stronghold. There is no reason why I can't deal with this lowly commoner, right? Humph, if that's the case, Fu Man will take care of the internal affairs here. Hou Yan waved his hand, and the soul beast landed. Hou Yan pretended to leave. Hey, brother. Yi Yu didn't expect that Hou Yan was already regretting his decision. He hastily shouted, but before he could finish his sentence, a strong wave of energy appeared in the sky. Then, a light flashed in the sky. It was as if a hurricane had blown past. 3 figures appeared from the light and flew into the distance. Ah! Yi Yu was shocked at first, but when he saw them clearly, he was wild with joy. Yes, of the 3 people who appeared, Xiao Mao, whom he wanted to kill the most, was among them. Xiao Hua, whom he feared the most, wasn't here. Wasn't this what he wanted? Hou Yan!
Yi Yu shouted recklessly. You and I have already agreed that the three of them have been sent here by the Huta goddess.
Look carefully. That young cultivator is my enemy. You only need to kill him today, and everything I promised you before will still count. Hou Yan was also shocked. He didn't know how these three people appeared here. When he heard Yi Yu's words, he was also moved. However, he was still cautious and said, It's just a few foundation establishment cultivators, why do you need to worry about them? How about this? I'll help you stall these 2 foundation establishment cultivators. As for that, you can deal with it yourself. Okay, I'll do as brother says. When Yi Yu heard this, he didn't say anything else. His soul beast roared in the air and rushed towards Xiao Mao. Several of Yi Yu's confidants also urged their soul beasts to chase after Xiao Mao. Hou Yan wasn't in a hurry. He looked coldly at them and waved his hand. A soul warrior came forward and gave a few orders. The 100 soul warriors shouted a few times and waved their soul armaments. Gradually, a green light appeared and rushed towards Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia. Hou Yan reached out his hand and a snow-white bone staff appeared in his hand. The soul beast under his feet also flew up. Ga. The 2 blue shaman feathers didn't know what was going on. They flapped their wings and flew into the air to catch up with the other soul beasts. Although none of the soul beasts were blue shaman feathers, the 2 blue shaman feathers seemed to be very close to the other soul beasts. From time to time, they would soar up and play with the other soul beasts. The green light also wrapped around the blue shaman feathers. In the blink of an eye, the entire mountain was empty except for Chia Weeping. Chia Weeping struggled painfully to get up. Almost immediately, he fell to his knees and stared at the sky. He stared at the direction where the others were going and saw Xiao Mao's tall figure. Xiao Mao and the others were just as surprised. They were originally together with Xiao Hua, so their speed was roughly the same. However, just as they were about to be teleported away, Xiao Hua's figure suddenly sped up again. He actually surpassed them by more than 30 meters, disappearing into the space ahead of them. It was truly impossible for them to catch up. However, when Xiao Mao and the others reappeared in midair, they found themselves in the millions of Meng Mountains. Sure enough, Xiao Hua was separated from them. Of course, when they realized that this was where Xiao Hua was before, they heard the cries of soul beasts behind them. With a sweep of their wills, they knew that Yi Yu was here. Truly, enemies are bound to meet. Li Zongbao sneered. With a clap of his hand, the immortal slaughtering whip appeared in his hand. Fairy Xianxia was even calmer. She opened her mouth and the phoenix token flew out and landed in her hand. Seeing the 2 of them take out their magical treasures, Xiao Mao did not dare to be negligent. With a clap of his hand, the broken golden arrow called the Sun Shooting Arrow was taken out from his storage bag. Yi Yu! Seeing Yi Yu controlling his soul beast to fly over, Li Zongbao said coldly, You really don't give up on your evil intentions. I should have killed you before we reached the Meng Mountains. Ha ha ha, Li Zongbao. I know that your name is Li Zongbao. I already knew that day at Drifting Cloud Lake. I also knew it during the Battle of the Sword Catacomb. Yi Yu laughed loudly. You, a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, want to kill me? You should take a piss and look at your own shadow. If it wasn't for the terrifying phoenix by your side that day, I would have already killed all of you. How could I have kept you alive until today? Yi Yu set up a soul formation in the Sword Catacomb and helped the sword cultivators of Huan Country to fight against the cultivators of the 3 cultivation countries. Fairy Xianxia waved her hand, causing the 5-colored phoenix medallion to emit a 5-colored brilliance around her. Then she said coldly, Today, there are also soul cultivators fighting against swordsmen in Meng Mountains. Are you a swordsman? Or a soul cultivator? Fairy Xia's voice was loud. Obviously, she wanted Hou Yan behind Yi Yu to hear her. Sure enough, when he heard Yi Yu setting up a soul formation for sword cultivators, Hou Yan frowned and controlled his soul beast to stop in mid-air. Haha, sword cultivators are the enemies of my Meng Mountains. Aren't cultivators the enemies of my Meng Mountains as well? Yi Yu was not flustered at all. He laughed loudly and said, My ancestors were sword cultivators. I have never denied this. However, my ancestors gave their all for the sake of the sword domain. Yet, when the sword cultivators won, They did not care about my ancestors' contributions and killed all of them.
If not for the fact that my ancestors were not in the sword domain and were able to escape, where would I be now? Therefore, I have long stopped seeing myself as a sword cultivator. The reason why I set up a soul formation in the sword catacomb to help LV Ruochang is because I have an agreement with her. The blood souls that activate the soul formation must be the disciples of the 4 sects who killed my ancestors. I am avenging my Yi clan. Although the swordsmen are fighting against the soul cultivators of Meng Mountains, I have always had a clear conscience and have always seen myself as a member of Meng Mountains. If you want to talk about this, you are looking down on the people of Meng Mountains.
Hearing this, Hou Yan was enlightened.
But then he was displeased. If Yi Yu had said this first, he might not have cared.
Just like what Yi Yu said, the life and death of cultivators had nothing to do with him.
Moreover, with Yi Yu's status, Hou Yan knew that Yi Yu would never do anything that would harm Meng Mountains for the sake of swordsmen.
However, it was Fairy Xianxia who forced Yi Yu to say this.
Yi Yu had the intention to hide this from Hou Yan, and this made Hou Yan feel uncomfortable.
Hee, who knows what you are thinking?
Fairy Xianxia saw Hou Yan's expression and her heart tightened.
She hurriedly said, "Everyone knows that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Huan country might be one of your destinations, and these millions of Meng Mountains might also be one of your bargaining chips."
Haha, Yi Yu was embarrassed and angry, but on the surface he laughed and waved his hand.
"You little girl, who do you think you are? You're just a nameless female cultivator.
If you knew my status in the village, perhaps you wouldn't say that."
"Humph. I naturally know that my surname is Kai and my name is Xianxia. I am the descendant of the Kai clan of Luyang."
Fairy Xianxia sneered. "Even if I die, my surname is still Kai. It is still better than those who forget their surname and their ancestral origins. Betray their ancestors and forget their ancestral origins, and go to other places, right? You still call yourself Shibai Village. Shibai Village is like you." At this point, Fairy Xianxia was stunned and blurted out, "Shibai Village? You are looking for..." As she spoke, Fairy Xianxia turned to look at Xiao Mao, who had also come to a realization.
Chapter 2846.
Well said, well said.
Yi Yu was not angry at all.
Instead, he clapped his hands and pointed at Xiao Mao behind Fairy Xianxia. "If we're talking about people who have been forgotten by their ancestors, this Xiao Mao behind you should be the first. He has the bloodline of the great god Shibai and even cultivates Taoist techniques. He's a Taoist and he doesn't even know his name. I'm afraid he's worse than me." As he spoke, Yi Yu turned to Hou Yan and said, "Little brother, I've already tolerated them for a long time. I was just afraid that you might have some grudges in your heart. Now that you've heard everything clearly, I haven't hidden anything from you." "Yes, we'll do as you said."
Hou Yan pointed out Yi Yu's identity. "I'll kill these 2 Taoist cultivators."
"Okay," Yi Yu nodded. Opening her mouth, the small sword was about to fly out, but Yi Yu hesitated for a moment. Clapping her hands together, the beast-like soul armament came out again. Muttering an incantation, the soul armament began to glow with a dark green light.
"Agree."
Xiao Mao and the others had a general understanding of the situation in the shaman village. When they heard Hou Yan's words, their expressions changed slightly. They understood Yi Yu's intention. Xiao Mao's eyes narrowed and anger appeared in his eyes. Needless to say, Yi Yu must have something to do with the death of Xiao Mao's parents. Otherwise, he would not have intercepted Xiao Mao and prevented him from going to Shibai Village.
"Humph. When did swordsmen learn to be so cunning?
You actually took over a magpie's nest in Meng Mountain." Li Zongbao waved his hand and the immortal slaying whip emitted a yellow light. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly gathered. He said coldly, "I hate such evil deeds the most. Eat my whip."
"Li Zongbao?
I heard you're a famous junior cultivator in Meng country. You're known as the #1 cultivator below the golden core stage." Hou Yan stomped his foot and the spirit beast flew over and blocked Li Zongbao's path. He said calmly, "I'm Hou Yan, a citizen of Meng Mountain's Huta village. I'm here to test you and see the power of the #1 cultivator below the golden core stage."
Hutu village?
Seeing hundreds of soul beasts gradually encircling them, making it hard for them to escape, Fairy Xianxia hurriedly said, "Huta stronghold has always been on good terms with Shibai stronghold,
and the descendants of Shibai stronghold have not appeared in Meng Mountains for many years. Now that Xiao Mao is the descendant of great god Shibai, you people of Huta stronghold should naturally be able to distinguish between the truth and the lies. This is the ancestral land of great god Shibai. Why are you protecting others? If Elder Wu and Ji-Man find out about this, Ho Yen, do you think you can escape punishment?
Ha ha ha.
A mere foundation establishment cultivator. What qualifications do you have to discuss the internal affairs of Meng Mountains? Ho Yen naturally knew what Fairy Xianxia was trying to do. He laughed. The two of you are my targets. If you obediently surrender or withdraw now, I can guarantee that I will not take your lives. Bah! Li Zongbao lightly spat out a mouthful of thick phlegm. Evil creature, no matter how dignified your words are, it cannot hide the evil in your heart. I believe that you also need the help of this bullshit Fu man in Huta stronghold, or else you would not do such a thing that has been forgotten by your ancestors. That's right. Xiao Mao flew out from behind Fairy Xianxia, pointing his finger at Xia weeping on a distant hillside, and said with grief and indignation, to use such cruel means to deal with the people under your command, you people do not deserve to be the people of Meng Mountains. Immediately after, Xiao Mao mumbled a dozen words in the native language of Meng Mountains. When he spoke, even though Ho Yen and the others were prepared, their expressions still changed. Even the hundreds of soul warriors flying in the air showed hesitation on their faces. Brother Ho Yen. Yi Yu naturally did not allow Xiao Mao to say anything more. He waved his hand, signaling a few of his trusted subordinates to attack. At the same time he said to Ho Yen, if not now, then when? Good. Ho Yen stretched out the bone staff in his hand and ordered loudly, my sons, these two Dao sect cultivators have broken into Meng Mountains. You all are under the orders of Hutu Great God to destroy the enemy. Kill them. When the soul warriors heard that they did not attack Xiao Mao directly, they were all overjoyed. They all roared and urged their soul beasts. The dark green brilliance was like two huge fingers, pointing at Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia. Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia naturally did not dare to fly. The two of them looked at each other, nodded slightly, and urged their transcendence energy. Li Zongbao waved his immortal slaughtering whip, and a lifelike shadow of the whip streaked across the sky, meeting the dark green brilliance head-on. In the blink of an eye, the shadow of the whip fell into the dark green brilliance. At the moment of contact, the shadow of the whip suddenly scattered, turning into hundreds of thumb-sized whip shadows. Puff 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 puff. The immortal slaughtering whip destroyed more than half of the green brilliance that was pointing at Li Zongbao. There were even a few small green brilliants that rushed into the green brilliance and hit the soul warriors in front of them. The soul warriors were shocked. They waved the soul weapons in their hands, and the soul beasts under their feet also opened their mouths, emitting a green brilliance in an attempt to block the whip shadows. Pow pow pow. Several more sounds were heard. The 4 or 5 whip shadows destroyed the green brilliance, and the whip shadows disappeared. But there were still 2 whip shadows that landed on the soul warriors. Following the screams of the 2 soul warriors, the skin of the soul warriors were torn open, and their flesh was badly mangled. They fell from the soul beasts. And the soul beasts also fell with the soul warriors. Hiss, seeing this, Ho Yen couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, his face showing astonishment. It wasn't that he hadn't seen a foundation establishment cultivator of the Dao sect, and it wasn't that he hadn't fought with the Huan Kingdom's illusory sword. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of Li Zongbao's strength, but he didn't expect Li Zongbao to be so powerful that he could even kill a soul warrior that ordinary cultivators couldn't get close to. Looking at Fairy Xianxia, it was even more beyond his expectations. The 5-colored phoenix token in Fairy Xianxia's hands looked very beautiful. She gently waved it, and a 5-colored light suddenly appeared, piercing into the dark green brilliance. In an instant, the brilliance was swept away. Although the multicolored light couldn't kill a soul warrior, it was enough to scare the soul beasts under the soul warriors into retreating several meters. This is troublesome. No wonder Yi Yu came to ask for help. Ho Yen thought to himself. After a slight hesitation, he waved his bone staff, and a faint green light appeared on his face. His mouth also muttered an incantation, and as Ho Yen chanted the witchcraft incantation, a faint layer of black gas appeared near him. At the same time, the soul warriors that Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia had repelled also raised their soul weapons. Their mouths also muttered the witchcraft incantation, and strands of black gas gradually appeared in the green light that connected them.
Not good. Seeing such a strange situation, Fairy Hongxia's heart was alarmed, and she hurriedly shouted, "Senior brother, junior brother Xiao, let's run."
Hee, you've already come here, still want to leave?
At this time, Yi Yu pointed his finger, and the drop of blood on the tip of his finger had already disappeared into the single eye of the palace-guarding beast. The palace-guarding beast's entire body glowed with a green light, and its body gradually expanded. Go, Yi Yu did not even finish his sentence, and immediately jumped up from the body of the palace-guarding beast, and landed on the back of the palace-guarding beast. He slapped his hand on the palace-guarding beast's forehead, and a green brilliance like the Milky Way poured down towards the three of them. "Humph," Li Zongbao sneered, and the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand waved again. The golden brilliance of the immortal slaughtering whip was indeed powerful, and even Yi Yu's soul technique could not block it. With just one whip, the green brilliance was dispersed. However, when the green brilliance flashed, Xiao Mao disappeared from Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia's side. A strong sword qi in the green brilliance forced Xiao Mao to move more than 10 feet away from the two of them. "Junior brother Xiao, don't be hasty," Fairy Hongxia dispelled the green brilliance and shouted, and was about to fly to Xiao Mao's side, when she heard a gloomy wind blowing in all directions, followed by countless ji-ji-ja-ja sounds, like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, that came from the left and right of them. Ah! Fairy Hongxia turned back to look, and saw that the area within 100 feet had been covered by a faint black aura. Within that black aura, countless ghost heads of various sizes were faintly discernible, bearing their fangs. Those chilling sounds were all coming from these ghost heads. Fairy Hongxia could not help but exclaim. Compared to female cultivators who were naturally frightened, Li Zongbao was considered to be better. However, looking at the ghost heads that were as small as fists and as big as rolling balls, and the bloody remains on top of them, an inexplicable chill rose from the bottom of his heart. Furthermore, these ghost heads seemed to have spiritual intelligence. Each of them opened their black mouths and bit into the green brilliance around them, as if they were swallowing it, and the sounds of crunching could be heard continuously. Not good. Suddenly, a chill rose from his side, and Li Zongbao did not hesitate to fling the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand. "Paw!" With a soft sound, the shadow of the whip lashed out, and a faint human figure appeared under the shadow of the whip, and this human figure flickered a few times before disappearing again. Hiss! Li Zongbao suddenly realized that other than the ghost heads that he could see, there were ghosts in the air that could not be seen with the naked eye. "Junior brother and sister, be careful!" Li Zongbao hurriedly shouted. "Those ghost heads are just to attract attention, the formless ghosts are the real killers." Fairy Hongxia was really afraid of these ghosts, and hurriedly waved the phoenix token in her hand, and a 5-colored brilliance suddenly appeared. Countless screams came from around her, and one by one, the human-shaped ghosts turned into green smoke under the 5-colored brilliance, and disappeared. Although Ho Yen had been chanting witchcraft incantations, and the black aura on the bone staff was getting thicker, he did not manage to control the ghosts. Instead, his face was getting darker and darker. However, when he saw the power of Fairy Hongxia's phoenix token, he could not help but be stunned. He did not even bother to chant any witchcraft incantations, and only stared at Fairy Hongxia's phoenix token with a strange expression in his eyes. It seems. Ho Yen seemed to have thought of something, but he could not be sure, or perhaps he had only heard it by chance, and could not remember it clearly. This expression only lasted for a moment, and was immediately replaced by greed. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, and he waved his bone staff, and hundreds of Hutu's stronghold spirit warriors moved.
Chapter 2847. Woo Woo. Hundreds and thousands of ghost heads rushed out from the green light. Under each ghost head, there was a surge of black gas. They charged towards Li Zongbao and Red Dawn Fairy ferociously. Fight! Li Zongbao did not have any other tricks up his sleeve. He knew that all spells would be ineffective. He could only activate the Celestial Slaying Whip to defend himself. Piak piak piak. One by one, the ghost heads were destroyed by the golden light of the Celestial Slaying Whip and turned into streaks of black gas. This black gas then gathered with the black gas of the other ghost heads and surrounded Li Zongbao. Although Li Zongbao was brave, there were too many ghost heads. Inadvertently, a ghost head bypassed the Celestial Slaying Whip and rushed towards Li Zongbao's legs. It easily bit on Li Zongbao's protective light. Ka-ka sounds came from the ghost head's mouth. After a few bites, Li Zongbao's protective light started to flicker. Li Zongbao hurriedly waved the celestial slaying whip and easily destroyed the ghost head. However, he was still a little nervous. He was not a golden core cultivator and could not have a protective golden light like Xiao Hua. This protective golden light was naturally a defensive yellow talisman. Of course, as an outstanding disciple of the Utopia faction, Li Zongbao also had a defensive magic item on him. However, he did not think that this protective magic item would be able to stop the ghost heads from swallowing him. Moreover, the celestial slaying whip was still an unformed spiritual weapon. Xiao Hua had already said that it had to be nurtured properly until the weapon's spirit matured. Only then would it be of great use. However, since entering the Huan Kingdom, Li Zongbao had used the celestial slaying whip more than once. It was like a fetus in its mother's arms being disturbed time and time again. How could it be born in 10 months? At this moment, after using the celestial slaying whip a few times, a gust of counterforce was generated from the celestial slaying whip. It rushed straight into his meridians and blood vessels. This counterforce was different from the one from the celestial slaying whip. During the Battle of the Sword Catacomb, Li Zongbao's cultivation level and magic power were not enough to fully control the celestial slaying whip. The counterforce was mainly damaging Li Zongbao's meridians and dantian. At this moment, the damage caused by this shapeless spirit artifact was more towards one's bloodline and mind. An indescribable sense of irritation and bloodiness gradually arose in Li Zongbao's heart. Looking at Fairy Xianxia, she seemed to have lost her usual calmness. Although the phoenix token in her hand was waved from time to time, there was no pattern to it. It was as though she was dancing purely out of fear. They couldn't form a regular attack. Therefore, even though this 5-colored light was very powerful and could block the ghostly heads and formless ghostly spirits better than the immortal slaughtering whip, the ghostly heads outside the light were gradually killed. However, even more ghostly heads and ghostly spirits were still pouncing on the light and devouring it. Furthermore, looking at how Fairy Xia's arm was moving slower and slower, it was obvious that her magical power was running out. Whiz! A long and thin cry rang out from about 100 feet away from Fairy Xia. The palace-guarding beast under Yi Yu raised its slender neck and its body glowed with a green light. The green light then gathered in front of the palace-guarding beast's chest. Following that, the palace-guarding beast spat out a half-chi-long green soul sword from its mouth and flew towards Xiao Mao, who was holding the shooting sun arrows in his hands. Go! Xiao Mao had been channeling his magical power all this while. Although he had not fully accumulated his power, the soul sword was already flying towards him. He did not dare to be careless. A golden light shot out and the shooting sun arrow flew towards the green soul sword. Woo! The shooting sun arrow disappeared in a flash and reappeared in front of the soul sword. The tip of the arrow seemed to have boundless strength, as though it could split the air in half. But what was extremely strange was that the soul sword at the tip of the arrow did not seem to be there at all. It passed through the shooting sun arrow and continued flying towards Xiao Mao. Furthermore, after passing through the shooting sun arrow, the speed of the soul sword suddenly increased. In the blink of an eye, it was less than 5 zhang away from Xiao Mao's forehead. Oh no! Xiao Mao saw that the shooting sun arrow that he had been accumulating power for a long time had missed its target. His heart turned pale with fright. An inescapable sense of control emerged from the soul sword and covered his forehead. A feeling of being unable to escape arose spontaneously. Damn it, this Meng Mountain spirit art is too strange. Xiao Mao smiled bitterly. He knew that he could no longer escape. Therefore he decided not to evade. He channeled the shooting sun arrow and flew towards Yi Yu without hesitation. He wanted to perish together with her. Jie, the sound of a beast's cry could be heard. Suddenly, a huge green shadow descended from the sky and blocked in front of Xiao Mao. It was the huge green witch feather. Yes, the green witch feather was not sentient. It had been playing with many spirit beasts. But when it saw that Xiao Mao was in danger, how could the green witch feather not give up its life? However, this soul sword was not an ordinary flying sword. Although the green witch feather's body was huge, the soul sword flew past the green witch feather and easily shattered its soul. The green witch feather only stopped flapping its wings for a moment and fell straight down from the sky. And it was obvious that the green witch feather's soul was too weak. After the soul sword was destroyed, it did not dim much. It only paused for a moment before thrusting towards Xiao Mao again. In the blink of an eye, it was less than half a foot away from Xiao Mao's forehead.
Just as the soul sword struck down the blue sorcerer feather, the shooting sun arrow arrived in front of Yi Yu. Yi Yu was shocked when he saw the shooting sun arrow emitting a powerful ripple of mana and an indescribable, terrifying aura of death. He quickly opened his mouth and threw out his dagger. With a crack, the dagger and the shooting sun arrow were both deflected. Xiao Mao's shooting sun arrow, a Foundation establishment cultivator, was actually on par with Yi Yu's dagger, a mirage sword cultivator. Even though the shooting sun arrow was deflected, it did not slow down. Several spirit beasts next to Yi Yu were unable to dodge in time and were all pierced by the shooting sun arrow. They did not even have time to scream before they fell from the sky. The spirit warriors were also heavily injured.
Damn it! Yi Yu's heart ached.
These soul warriors' cultivation levels were about the same as those at the early stage of the Foundation establishment and the peak of the aura refining stage, but they were loyal.
It wasn't easy for him to train a few of them in the Shibai village.
Kill! Yi Yu roared in his mind. The spirit beast under his feet swung its tail and the soul sword pierced Xiao Mao's forehead.
Gah!
The other green witch feather cried out.
It was a bit confused as it watched its mother fall from the sky. Then it looked at Xiao Mao, then at the corpse of the older green witch feather, and quickly fell down. With a boom, the corpse of the green witch feather fell to the ground. There was a large cloud of dust, but in the battle, no one saw it. Little green witch feather fell down and let out a few gaga sounds. Using its beak, it saw that its mother was ignoring it. It was a bit helpless. Then it turned its head to look at Xiao Mao. Then it flew to a distant mountain peak. There, Qi was kneeling in a pool of blood and looking at Xiao Mao with great sincerity. Qi's mouth was still muttering, but no one knew if he was praying or doing something else. Those trembling legs, those arms that had already turned into white bones. He didn't know what kind of power was supporting him bitterly. Qi's eyes were fixed on the soul sword piercing Xiao Mao's forehead. His heart was already in a knot. Needless to say, Xiao Mao's life was what Qi was most concerned about. It had long surpassed his own life. The soul sword was like a bolt of green lightning that instantly pierced Xiao Mao's forehead. The moment the soul sword entered his body, a trace of sorrow flashed through Xiao Mao's eyes. The desire to control life and death had never been so strong. The desire to control power had never been so strong. Perhaps only in the face of death, in the face of complete despair, could one's most primitive desire be aroused. Facing Xiao Mao, a smile appeared on Yi Yu's face. Cultivators had no special ability to resist the soul sword. Unless they were golden core or nascent soul cultivators, or their own heavenly talisman patterns could block it. As for Foundation establishment cultivators, only death awaited them. Who knew that when the soul sword entered Xiao Mao's forehead, a cluster of green light bloomed from the spot where the soul sword entered. It was like a blooming morning glory. On the petals of the soul sword, many small green seal runes swam out. The change in Xiao Mao's forehead stunned Yi Yu. The soul sword that had just disappeared flew out from the green seal runes and attacked the palace-guarding beast under Yi Yu's feet. Moreover, the soul sword's trajectory was exactly the same as before, but its speed was several times faster. Before Yi Yu could react, the soul sword rushed into the palace-guarding beast's mouth. "Hey-ho-ho!" The palace-guarding beast cried out in pain. Its entire body rapidly shrank and green light flashed. Yi Yu's face was abnormally pale. Not only was he shocked, but he was also heavily injured because of the soul sword. At this time, he couldn't care about anything else. He activated the soul sword under his feet and stood in the air. As soon as Yi Yu came to a stop, the palace-guarding beast transformed back into a soul armament. Cracks began to appear all over the surface of the soul armament, and when the wind blew by, the soul armament was reduced to dust. Yi Yu tried his best to suppress the pain in his head. He sucked in a breath of cold air and rejoiced at how lucky he was. For the sake of face, he used a soul armament to kill Xiao Mao in front of Ho Yan and the other soul warriors. If he had used his own soul technique to kill Xiao Mao, then it wouldn't have been the palace-guarding beast soul armament that would have been reduced to dust. It would have been Yi Yu himself. Third uncle. Yi Yu came to a sudden realization. It must have been because of Xiao Mao's strange phenomenon that his third uncle couldn't kill Xiao Mao. Oh? Yi Yu wasn't the only one who was surprised by this. Even Xiao Mao himself didn't know what was going on. An indescribable feeling of soreness came from his glabella. After the soul sword was repelled,
The soul sword slowly returned to Xiao Mao's glabella and disappeared as if it was never there in the first place. Whoosh! There was a flash of golden light as the shooting sun arrow landed in front of Xiao Mao again after killing several soul cultivators. Ha ha ha! Yi Yu's eyes lit up when he saw the shooting sun arrow. You really are the descendant of God Shibai. Normal soul techniques can't hurt you. But even without a soul technique, I can still kill you.
Chapter 2848. As he spoke, Yi Yu's sword flashed and a dragon-shaped sword appeared from his body. Gusts of wind blew and countless amounts of heaven and earth spiritual chi rushed towards Yi Yu's dragon-shaped sword. Roar! As the orange-yellow sword light soared into the sky from Yi Yu's body. An extremely complete dragon-shaped sword intent flashed within the sword light. An enormous and indescribable aura spread out from the dragon-shaped sword, enveloping an area of several dozen meters around it. The dragon-shaped sword will was extremely ferocious and was very similar to Yi Yu's arrogant face. The entire dragon-shaped sword will circled in the air and flew towards Xiao Mao. Under the dragon-shaped sword will, Xiao Mao's entire body was covered by the aura. The aura was like a tidal wave that completely drowned him. There was no room for him to breathe. Go! Xiao Mao knew that this was a critical moment. The dragonization manual in his meridians was activated and his true yuan rushed into the shooting sun arrow like a flood. Instantly, the tip of the shooting sun arrow emitted a strong golden light. The entire arrow flew into the air and destroyed the sword will. It then shot towards the head of the dragon-shaped sword will. When Xiao Mao sent Night Rain's soul sword back, Ho Yan's bone staff also slowly drew a line in the air. The appearance of the green seal text really gave Ho Yan a fright. However, when he saw the green seal text disappear, Ho Yan's eyes flashed with a pensive light. The bone staff in his hand just happened to draw an oval in the air. As Ho Yan lifted the bone staff, it was as if he was opening a lid. A thick black gas flew out from the oval. Ayo! A mournful ghostly cry came from the black gas, causing Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia, who were surrounded by the ghostly heads, to tremble in fear. Woo! A thick black shadow rushed out from the black smoke. A ghost head that was several times larger than all the previous ghost heads opened its pitch-black mouth and revealed itself. Hiss hiss! The ghost head spun a few rounds in the air and laughed loudly. Ho Yan's face was a little pale, but he still chanted an incantation and pointed the bone staff in his hand. A green light fell on the ghost head, and the ghost head suddenly trembled as if it was extremely afraid of Ho Yan. It flew towards the direction the bone staff was pointing at. The targets of the ghost heads were naturally Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia. When the ghost heads charged into the group of ghost heads, they were not in a hurry to attack Fairy Xia's five-colored light. Instead, they opened their mouths wide and swallowed a dozen ghost heads nearby with crunching sounds. In an instant, the ghost heads were scared out of their wits. Evil creature! Ho Yan cursed and pointed the bone staff in his hand again. The ghost head quickly flew up and rushed towards Li Zongbao, who was not protected by the five-colored light. You're courting death. Li Zongbao's red flashed across his face again. Bang! The ghost head's head was head. However, the two ghost heads laughed at the same time and turned back into two complete ghost heads. They then bit at Li Zongbao from two different directions. Attack! Li Zongbao waved his hand again and destroyed the two ghost heads at the same time. Although part of the ghost heads were destroyed by the Immortal slaying whip, the remaining part formed another 4 ghost heads and charged at Li Zongbao again. Sigh, what a pity about this spiritual artifact. Seeing that the Immortal slaughtering whip could not kill the ghost heads, Li Zongbao sighed. He knew that a spiritual artifact would not be this powerful. It was just that his magic power was not enough and the spiritual artifact was not completed yet. However, he also knew that if he could not escape this calamity today, this spiritual artifact would not be completed in this lifetime. Where did Xiaohua go? Instantly, Li Zongbao thought of Xiaohua again. He can ignore my life, but does he dare to ignore Fairy Xia's life? Li Zongbao was in danger, and Xiao Mao was even worse. The shooting sun arrow was the dragon-shaped sword will that hit Night Rain. Although the golden light on the shooting sun arrow was destroyed by the dragon-shaped head, the dragon body was not damaged and still pierced towards Xiao Mao. Gee! Before the dragon-shaped sword will could get close, another green witch feather cried out from mid-air. The smaller green witch feather also flew down. Different from the older green witch feather, there was a person sitting on the smaller green witch feather. It was the dying Chiu weeping. Pang! With a muffled sound, the dragon-shaped sword will hit the green witch feather. There was no suspense at all. Although the green witch feather's body was big, the sword will that formed the dragon-shaped sword will cut the green witch feather into pieces and even cut through the corpse. As for Chiu weeping, the sword will cut through his body and he ended up like the green witch feather. The poor native Chiu weeping. Although he was saved by Xiao Mao from the mouth of another native, he still could not escape the fate of being killed by Meng Mountain's soul warriors. This devout native, until his death, his eyes were still filled with determination and conviction as he stared at Xiao Mao. He could not bear to look away for even a moment. The deaths of the green witch feather and Chiu weeping were not without effect. At least the dragon-shaped sword will was blocked. However, just as the dragon-shaped sword intent faded, a sharp sword beam rushed out from the dragon's body. It was none other than Night Rain's intrinsic sword. It had been hidden under the sword intent in an attempt to sneak an attack on Xiao Mao. The origin sword had just flown out and the corpses of the green witch feather and Chiu weeping had not yet landed when a faint, scarred divine will swept over from afar. This divine will was so weak that it was like an old man in his twilight years. It was weak, but from this divine will, there was a tenacity and persistence. However, when the divine will swept over the corpses of the green witch feather and Chiu weeping, this divine will was ignited in an instant. A feeling of extreme anger came from this divine will. At the same time, in the distant sky, there was a faint rumbling of thunder. Hurry, the terrifying phoenix is coming. Night Rain felt the divine will and immediately urged, "This guy is almost as strong as a nascent soul cultivator. He's really strong." "Oh, nascent soul cultivator?" Ho Yen was stunned and quickly asked. "Fu Man didn't seem to have mentioned it before?" "Heh, as Yi Yu controlled her life-bound dagger to attack Xiao Mao," she replied. "He's almost as strong as a nascent soul cultivator, but he's still not a nascent soul cultivator. Do you really think he'll be able to escape the combined might of us soul warriors?" "Humph, what's the point of mentioning it now?" Ho Yen was too lazy to argue with Night Rain. He waved the bone staff in his hand again and the 8 ghost heads that had been destroyed by Li Zongbao roared and rushed towards Li Zongbao. Go! Xiao Mao saw the origin sword flying in front of him. He tried his best to dodge while making hand seals to control the sunshot arrow to attack Night Rain. It was a completely suicidal attack. Night Rain explained to Ho Yen while dodging the sunshot arrow. In a hurry, she didn't have the strength to kill Xiao Mao in an instant. Roar! The 8 ghost heads entangled Li Zongbao's slaughtering immortal whip. The other ghost heads found a gap and rushed in front of Li Zongbao. They opened their mouths to bite at Li Zongbao's protective magic treasure. The brilliance around Li Zongbao's body was extremely bright. It seemed that he was about to fall into a dangerous situation. Rumble! The sound of thunder streaked across the sky. It was even faster than the white horse galloping across the crevice. However, when the heavenly thunder was about 10 miles away, 2 streaks of green and red sword light shot towards Night Rain like shooting stars. Flying swords. At this time, Night Rain's dragon-shaped sword intent was already activated. The orange-yellow brilliance illuminated the sky as it roared and pierced towards Xiao Mao. Seeing the 2 flying swords flying towards him, he couldn't help but sneer. It was a kind of contempt coming from the corner of his mouth. Yes, what was the difference between using flying swords in front of a sword cultivator and displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert? Especially when the 2 flying swords were about 10 feet away from Night Rain, the green and red sword rays suddenly bloomed. The 2 sword rays, one on the left and one on the right, actually formed a heart shape in the air. The heart shape became increasingly elongated and actually turned into the shape of a sword. Night Rain laughed even more. He had never seen a sword intent that was shaped like a sword before. However, the heart sword was filled with anger and hatred. An indescribable fear emerged from the bottom of his heart. Yes, this was the killing intent in Xiao Hua's heart towards Night Rain. It was born when he saw Qi being killed by Night Rain. Although Xiao Hua risked his spirit sense to search for Fairy Xianxia and the rest, if he saw Fairy Xianxia injured by Night Rain, the killing intent in his heart might not be so deep. Even if he saw Xiao Mao being injured by Night Rain, he wouldn't be so angry. Because this kind of injury was caused by a battle of life and death. It was an injury caused by an enemy of the same level. Xiao Hua might not have any other thoughts. However, what he saw was Qi, a native, who was practically unarmed and defenseless against Night Rain. Yet, He was brutally killed by night rain. This native didn't have any special feelings for Xianxia. However, when this native fainted from hunger, he was almost eaten by his companions. When this native was saved by Xiao Mao, he didn't mention anything about being eaten by his companions. Xiaohua didn't think that this native didn't know the situation at that time.
Furthermore, when he was welcoming Xiao Mao to Bayan's stronghold, he was incomparably sincere, almost treating Xiao Mao as his own sky.
Xiaohua didn't know the situation of Qieqi's family, nor did he know if he had any children. However, when Xiao Mao asked Qieqi to lead the way, the gratitude in Qieqi's eyes was enough to move Xiaohua. Looking at Qieqi's shattered corpse and that white bone right arm, how could Xiaohua not know that this native had been interrogated by night rain? Of course, Xiaohua didn't know how this native answered. However, if this native was forced to reveal Xiao Mao's whereabouts, would he have suffered such heavy injuries? Besides, how could Qieqi know the whereabouts of Xiao Mao and the rest? Although Xiaohua only saw the scene after Qieqi's death, he saw a lot. He saw Qing Shi Wuyu's loyalty, saw Qieqi's sincerity, saw their determination to die for Xiao Mao. Although this native was a native, his heart was more honest and noble than a spirit warrior. If Xiaohua didn't kill Night Rain, he wouldn't be able to face this native. Therefore, Night Rain must die. Xiaohua must kill Night Rain. The anger of the heart sword was the anger in Xiaohua's heart. Chapter 2849. Yi Yu didn't know the origin of Xiaohua's anger, nor did he care about the newly born heart sword. However, as soon as the heart sword was born, a sharp sword qi rushed out from the heart sword. A nearly invincible sword qi rushed out from the heart sword, not at all inferior to his own soaring dragon sword intent. The ridicule on Yi Yu's face froze. Whoosh, as soon as the heart sword was born, it met the incoming soaring dragon sword intent head-on. The two sword intents collided, and a wave of qi soared to the sky. After a loud bang, the orange sword qi and the green and red sword qi scattered like tiny snakes. Yi Yu's body couldn't be controlled under the power of the sword qi and involuntarily flew back. A dark red color appeared on his face, and his eyes were filled with indescribable astonishment. Transform. Transform into a sword. Yes, the sword qi of the heart sword defeated Yi Yu's disdain. This sword intent was something he was familiar with and desired. How is this possible? Yi Yu whispered and hurriedly urged the somewhat chaotic sword qi in his body. This Xiaohua is still several li away. He is a Dao sect cultivator. At this moment, a sharp pain came from his Naiwan palace, as if a sharp awl had pierced deep into his body. Yi Yu just sensed it, and at the same time, he hurriedly urged a secret technique to block Xiaohua's soul stab. Not waiting for him to counterattack. Rumble! Countless lightning bolts flew close to the sky and fell down. Each lightning bolt was like a sharp sword, and it struck the hundreds and thousands of ghost heads. Those ghost heads turned into green smoke under the heavenly lightning, and slowly disappeared. Oh! The ghost head that attacked Li Zongbao heard the thunder, and although it wasn't hit by the heavenly lightning, it still slightly trembled. Obviously, it was extremely afraid of the thunder. Seeing this, Ho Yen frowned and shouted a few times. He waved his bone staff, and a burst of black qi rushed into the ghost head. The ghost head seemed to have eaten a spirit herb, and suddenly swelled up. With a crunch, it bit on Li Zongbao's defensive brilliance, and the brilliance was instantly annihilated by more than half. Under Ho Yan's command, the soul cultivators that surrounded Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia immediately split into 80%, and flew toward Xiaohua on their respective soul beasts. However, they didn't dare to use the ghost heads, and instead sent out beams of green light, to block Xiaohua's soul formation technique, and to block Xiaohua. Senior brother, don't panic. Fairy Xianxia was already somewhat weak, but she still managed to wave the Phoenix command to protect Li Zongbao. Don't worry about me, Li Zongbao said coldly. Protect Xiao Mao first. While speaking, Li Zongbao waved his slaughtering immortal whip, and destroyed a ghost head. Okay, Fairy Xianxia knew that Li Zongbao was in a critical situation, but he wasn't Night Rain's target. Xiao Mao was not only someone Night Rain wanted to kill, but also the descendant of Meng Mountain's Shibai. He was the hope of the people of Shibai village, and his safety couldn't be lost. But when Fairy Xianxia waved the Phoenix command, the green and red heart swords flew in front of Xiao Mao. The 3-foot-long heart swords were like a white jade pillar that supported the heavens and firmly protected Xiao Mao.
Darling Xiao is here.
Fairy Xia's heart relaxed for no reason, and she looked into the distance. Xiao Hua's figure was already in sight. Facing the dozens of soul warriors and soul beasts, he didn't hesitate to take out the soul-absorbing bell. The toad, under the control of the soul strands, struck the soul-absorbing bell.
With a loud clang, the dozens of soul warriors swayed slightly, and the green light that filled the sky suddenly flashed.
But only for a moment, the green light seemed to go crazy. It rushed into the soul-absorbing bell, and with a ka-cha-cha sound, the soul-absorbing bell cracked open. Then, the toad began to tremble rapidly. Like sand being blown away by the wind, the toad turned into fine dust and fell to the ground. It was just like Night Rain's guardian beast was defeated. What's more, the strands of soul strands that Xiao Hua used to control the soul strands were suddenly hit by a strong force. All of the strands of soul strands couldn't help but dance with a strong force, and this dance was transmitted to the mysterious dark clouds. Damn it, the soul armaments I picked up are trash. Startled, Xiao Hua hurriedly pulled out his strands of soul strands and tried to absorb them into the dark clouds. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In just a moment, the dark clouds in Xiao Hua's mind seemed to have been hit by a heavy punch. It shook for a moment, and in front of Xiao Hua, the entire world was shaking. Trying to be clever but making a fool of myself. Xiao Hua resisted the nausea and discomfort with great difficulty.
Without the slightest hesitation, he made a grabbing motion with his hand.
Several more bolts of heavenly lightning fell, striking the several dozen spirit warriors. Threads of lightning flickered within the green light, slowly melting the green light. Roar! The dozens of soul warriors struggled to use their solar rays to block the lightning. Roaring in unison, they waved their soul armaments, and at the same time, their soul beasts attacked in order to stop Xiao Hua.
Humph!
Xiao Hua snorted coldly. After looking at the dozens of soul warriors, he saw Night Rain controlling her flying sword. Furthermore, Night Rain himself flew out. While Xiao Hua was controlling his sword intent from afar, the sword energy around his body was also surging.
Clang! The sound of a sword shook the heavens. Xiao Hua's figure slowly transformed into a sword and suddenly swung it in the air.
Ka-cha! A crisp sound came from the collision between the sword and the solar rays of the soul warriors. The green light of the solar rays was cut in half by Xiao Hua's sword.
Good! Seeing the solar rays broken, Xiao Hua was overjoyed.
Swordsmen really are the nemesis of soul warriors. Immediately after, Xiao Hua's figure gradually returned to normal. The sword light retracted, and like a cool breeze, he flashed past the dozens of frightened soul warriors and flew to the sky behind Night Rain. Woo! Now, Night Rain had already activated the dragon-shaped sword intent to attack Xiao Hua's sword. Then, with a wave of his hand, a cluster of sword light came out and chopped straight at Xiao Mao, who was about to activate the shooting sun arrows. Night Rain, you will pay with your life for Qi. Xiao Hua sneered. With a clap of his hand, he took out the yin-yang sword gourd. The executioner's elemental light rushed out, and the green and red elemental light came straight down, twisting towards Night Rain's neck. The executioner's elemental light was Xiao Hua's sharpest move. Even something as strong as the executioner's elemental light would be defeated, let alone Night Rain. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and prepared to look at Hou Yan, who was controlling the ghost head to deal with Li Zongbao. However, just as the green and red sword lights were about to land, a flat disc that was several feet in size suddenly flew out from Night Rain's hand. This disc seemed to be made of metal, but it wasn't. It seemed to be made of wood, but it wasn't made of wood. There wasn't any light coming from it, and it didn't seem to be made of anything. But under the green and red elemental light, this thin disc had some specks of light on it. These specks of light weren't elemental light, but rather fluorescent. These specks of light were like starlight. These specks of light were moving in a mysterious way, and as the green and red elemental light came closer, the specks of light grew darker and darker. Clang! The executioner's elemental light was blocked by this strange disc, and the disc was spinning slightly, as if it wasn't damaged at all. What kind of soul armament is this? Xiao Hua was stunned. Fairy Xianxia, who was standing next to Xiao Mao, hurriedly called out, "This is the 5-elemental astrolabe that was used to set up the 5-elemental sword array in the sword catacomb."
So that's what it is.
Xiaohua understood.
He had heard from Li Zongbao that after the 5-elemental sword array was broken by Fairy Xianxia, the 5-elemental astrolabe flew away with Liao Quebec.
But somehow, it ended up in Night Rain's hand.
Humph, Xiaohua laughed coldly. Night Rain, even if you have the 5-elemental astrolabe, do you think you can escape from me?
While speaking, Xiaohua clapped his hands and a dragon roar resounded. The seal of overturning the sea was summoned as well. The yellow coiling dragon was activated by Xiaohua's mana and flew straight into the air.
The seal in its mouth also enveloped Night Rain from afar.
The powerful sealing force came from the seal of overturning the sea. This. Night Rain stared dumbfoundedly at the heart sword in front of Xiao Mao.
Then he looked at the sword gourd in the air, and finally at the seal of the overturning sea. He finally understood how terrifying Xiaohua was. When had he ever seen a cultivator or swordsman who could control 3 magic treasures and swords at the same time? Hee, Xiaohua laughed sinisterly. My wife, you go and help senior brother Li. I will chop off the head of this soul cultivator. Swordsman. Yes, Fairy Xianxia pursed her lips and smiled.
She saw Xiaohua toss out the dozens of sparkling fire talismans.
She knew what Xiaohua was going to do.
Sure enough, when Fairy Xianxia and Xiao Mao flew towards Li Zongbao, dozens of huge fireballs exploded in the night rain. Not only did the 5 elements astrolabe shake violently, but even the dragon-shaped sword will was also shaken to the point that it dissipated. Night Rain, who was inside the sword gourd, was pushed left and right by the shockwave, as if he could not control his body.
Bastard, I'll take your life.
The smoke dissipated, and Yi Yu rushed out of the air wave with a somewhat ashen face. His divine sense swept over, but he didn't see Xiaohua's figure. Just as he felt that something was wrong, he heard Xiaohua's sneer from above his head. It was precisely Xiaohua who had used the Demon Realm's concealment technique to ambush him from behind. That huge wolf-tooth club carried a woo sound as it smashed towards Yi Yu's back. Go! Night Rain panicked and hurriedly urged the 5-elemental astrolabe to block Xiaohua's wolf-tooth club. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. He did not see Xiaohua's right hand holding the wolf-tooth club. That hand was already open. Withdraw. The moment the wolf-tooth club touched the 5-elemental astrolabe, Xiaohua used the Heaven and Earth Sleeve technique. In an instant, he cut off the connection between Night Rain and the 5-elemental astrolabe. Then, before Night Rain could be surprised, the 5-elemental astrolabe mysteriously disappeared from the air.
Kill! Xiaohua's face showed a sinister smile.
The yin-yang sword gourd in the air flashed slightly, and the soul-slaying vital light flew out again. Seeing that Night Rain had lost the 5-elemental astrolabe under Xiaohua's sneak attack, and was about to fall under the soul-slaying vital light, an extremely hot and violent shockwave came from behind Xiaohua and the others. Moreover, Xiao Mao exclaimed again. Chapter 2850. Xiaohua had no time to kill Night Rain.
He hurriedly looked back and saw that Hidorigami was already less than 2 li away from them.
Although it was only 2 li away, most of the ghost heads around Xiaohua's group had disappeared. The green light was also destroyed by Hidorigami's heat wave. The hundreds of spirit soldiers and soul beasts that were chasing them did not dare to approach Hidorigami. As for Hou Yan, who wanted to kill Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia, his expression was extremely ugly. Although the ghost heads he controlled were still struggling in the heat wave, they seemed to be extremely afraid of Hidorigami. However, all of this was nothing. What puzzled Xiaohua the most was that Hanba, who was originally chasing after him, was now looking at Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao seemed to be imprisoned by something. Although he was holding the shooting sun arrow in his hand, other than his earlier exclamation, he could not move at all. Even the dozen or so soul warriors that had been attacking Li Zongbao from all sides were now nothing more than blossoms of blood. Slowly they fell to the ground. Clearly, this was done by Hidorigami, who was 2 li away. This is bad, Xiaohua immediately understood. Hidorigami has taken a fancy to Xiao Mao. I'm afraid he's going to be used as a mistress. As he thought about it, Xiaohua glared fiercely at Night Rain, who had used the opportunity while he was distracted to check on Xiao Mao, and who had managed to activate his sword light to escape into the distance. He pointed at the yin-yang sword gourd, and the spirit extermination primordial light from the sword gourd immediately flew out and surrounded Xiao Mao, trying to break free from the force that was imprisoning Xiao Mao. Who knew that when the green and red sword flashed, Xiao Mao was still unable to move. It was as if there was no imprisonment at all.
Ouch! At this moment, Fairy Xianxia screamed and could not help but hold her forehead. Seeing this, Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, "Don't release your soul sense." Just as he finished speaking, a burning feeling was born. Xiaohua looked at Hidorigami, who was flying very close to him, and helplessly put away the seal of turning the sea and yin yang sword gourd, leaving only the soul-slaying dream and mountain splitter around him.
What should I do?
Xiaohua took out the wishful staff and was also unable to hit anything.
Xiaohua panicked. This Hidorigami's methods were really strange. He had no idea how to deal with it.
Just as Xiaohua was at his wit's end, Hou Yan, whose face was green and red, clenched his teeth. He looked at where Night Rain was fleeing in panic and pointed his bone staff at the ghost head. The ghost head let out a howl and quickly fled with Hou Yan. It didn't want to stay here any longer.
Xiaohua slightly squinted his eyes and saw that Hou Yan had also run away, but he was also unable to take care of him. At this moment, something strange happened again. Xiao Mao's figure suddenly charged towards Hidorigami. His flying speed was extremely fast. How can this be? Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He immediately used the wind escape technique and chased after Xiao Mao. Without hesitation, he waved his hand and used the heaven and earth sleeve technique to take Xiao Mao into his space. But right at this time, Xiao Mao's figure suddenly vanished. Xiao Hua's universe in sleeve technique actually missed. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He didn't know whether he had taken Xiao Mao into his space or not. At this time, that incomparable heat suddenly surged. Xiao Hua's heart swelled, as if his whole body was about to explode. However, this feeling disappeared in a flash. His entire surroundings immediately became cool and cool again. Looking into the distance, Hidorigami, who had been approaching earlier, had also disappeared. At this time, even if Xiao Hua didn't look at his space, how could he not know that Xiao Mao must have been taken away by Hidorigami? However, Xiao Hua still cautiously looked into his space. There was no sign of Xiao Mao's figure. Xiao Lang. Junior brother Xiao. Fairy Xianxia and Li Zongbao's voices rang out at the same time. The two of them stared blankly at the scene that was abnormally lively just a moment ago. It was a matter of life and death. Now, it was abnormally quiet. There was no sign of a fourth person. They didn't know what to say. There? Xiao Hua opened his left hand slightly and quickly looked. He pointed in a direction and said, "Quickly chase." "Let's go." Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia naturally didn't know that Xiao Hua's transcendence vision had seen a streak of bright red in the distance. They looked at each other and both of them activated their transcendence energy and followed Xiao Hua in that direction. Xiao Hua kept his transcendence vision open, not daring to be distracted. He was afraid that he would accidentally lose track of Hidorigami. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia knew that Xiao Hua didn't have a sense of direction. As they flew forward with Xiao Hua, they paid attention to the direction. However, Xiao Hua's lightning escape technique was so fast. How could Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia catch up to him? In just a moment, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared from their eyes. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia had no choice but to release their divine senses. Luckily, as Hidorigami's figure disappeared, the burning heat also disappeared. The two of them could still see Xiao Hua through their divine senses. They saw that Xiao Hua wasn't chasing in a straight line. Instead, he was moving left and right as if he was playing hide-and-seek with someone. Luckily, Xiao Hua's lightning escape technique was really impressive. He could still change directions in such a hurry. However, it was obvious that even if Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia could catch up to Xiao Hua with their divine senses, with Xiao Hua's speed, he would sooner or later rush out of the range of their divine senses. Fairy Hongxia smiled bitterly and turned to look at Li Zongbao. Although Li Zongbao's expression was calm, his eyes were obviously red. "Follow junior brother Xiao." Li Zongbao casually swung the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand. Now that Xiao Mao is in danger, junior brother Xiao can't not go and save him. With your phoenix token and my immortal slaughtering whip here, there shouldn't be any danger for now. Fairy Hongxia knew that Li Zongbao's words were reasonable. However, she was still worried. Not to mention that she had seen so many ghostly heads earlier, which had frightened her. Even Hidorigami's ability to burn divine senses and separate Xiao Mao made her worried for Xiao Hua. Indeed, not long after,
Xiaohua escaped from their divine senses and they couldn't find any trace of him. Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia didn't dare to go in any other direction. They only chased in the direction where Xiaohua disappeared. Xiaohua naturally knew that Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia were in an awkward situation. However, he really couldn't have the best of both worlds. His divine senses were severely injured. Not only did he not dare to release them, but he also felt waves of discomfort coming from the Buddha's saraira. He could only release his Buddhist senses. However, he couldn't find any trace of Hidorigami. At this moment, he could only use his Buddhist senses to search for traces of Fairy Xia and Li Zongbao. He could only use his Dharma eyes to track the faint bright red in the distance. Logically speaking, Xiaohua's lightning evasion was already extremely fast. Previously, he should have been able to surpass Hidorigami by a lot. However, it was strange now. After chasing for a long time, he still couldn't get close to the bright red. It was as if Hidorigami didn't take Xiaohua seriously at all. Moreover, the bright red in front of him was always vague and indistinct. It even hid from time to time. Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. How could he distinguish the direction? He only chased after the bright red light. After chasing for more than half a day, the surrounding scenery changed greatly. The original barren land gradually disappeared. Large patches of vegetation began to appear. Of course, these vegetation were also extremely withered and yellow. They were all on the verge of death. The mountain peaks became steeper. Between the mountains, there were more obvious ravines. The deep pits must be the pools and streams from before. Similarly, there were many millet stalks lying on the ground. Some were more than a foot tall, while others were only an inch long. These millet stalks didn't have any ears. They were no different from the withered and yellow vegetation nearby. If it was any other day, Xiaohua might have scattered the millet stalks. However, his body was like a bolt of lightning as he whizzed past. He didn't have any intention to investigate. Even so, after Xiaohua's body streaked across a ravine, he suddenly stopped. The lightning around him didn't stop. In fact, it suddenly expanded. He flew forward for more than 1,000 feet and arrived at another ravine. Immediately after, Xiaohua's entire body was like a headless fly as he flew extremely quickly within a radius of 100 zhang. There were even a few times when Xiaohua's body escaped into the ravine. However, after tossing and turning like this for the time it took to finish a meal, Xiaohua finally stopped in midair. His eyes quickly spun around, as if he wanted to find something in this place. That's right, just a moment ago, an indistinct bright red flew to this place and suddenly disappeared. It disappeared without any warning. Xiaohua had already searched this place for a long time. Within his Dharma eyes and Buddhist perception, there were no traces of it. There were no burning marks. It was as if Hanba had never come to this place. At this point, how could Xiaohua not know that he had lost Hanba? Hanba had calmly escaped in front of his eyes. In fact, Xiaohua had a faint feeling that the so-called bright red might be Hanba's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. But now what could Xiaohua say? He had been flying for a long time. Not only did he not catch up to Xiao Mao, Fairy Xia and Li Zongbao who were behind him had also disappeared. Ah! Xiaohua looked up to the sky and shouted. He was really vexed. However, that voice reverberated in the distance. There were many echoes. Every echo seemed to be the mountains mocking Xiaohua. Right, how could this young master forget? Suddenly, Xiaohua thought of the fire ape in his spirit storage bag. Without hesitation, Xiaohua patted his hand and took out the fire ape from his spirit storage bag. At this moment, the fire ape was wearing a Taoist crown on its head. It looked left and right in astonishment. Its expression was even more like a monkey wearing a crown. When the fire ape saw Xiaohua, its eyes were completely red. Its face revealed its extreme viciousness. Flames appeared on its hands without hesitation and attacked Xiaohua. Humph, Xiaohua sneered. He pointed his finger and chanted an incantation. Roar, roar, roar. The sun and moon corona above the fire ape's head shone brightly and gradually tightened. An incomparable pain emerged from the fire ape's forehead. That pain was bone-piercing and heart-piercing. It directly pierced into the fire ape's soul. The fire ape screamed miserably and rolled on the ground, smashing rocks and other objects into pieces.
Chapter 2851. Looking at the fire ape's painful appearance, the anger in Xiaohua's heart lessened.
He stopped and roared. "Where is the drought demon? Quickly bring me to find it."
Xiaohua called out 3 times in a row, but the fire ape was still moaning on the ground. It didn't answer and didn't fly up.
There was still an obvious untamed look in its eyes. "Since you don't want to speak, then you can wait for death."
Xiaohua sneered and chanted the incantation again.
"Roar!" the fire ape roared again.
Its voice was already clearly hoarse. Even its rolling on the ground slowed down.
"You still won't speak?"
Xiaohua stopped the incantation and said indifferently.
"Gee," the fire ape rolled its eyes.
It seemed to have compromised.
It carefully climbed up from the ground, arched its claws and pointed in a direction in front.
"Oh, where is it?" Just as Xiaohua was about to raise his head, a sharp wind suddenly came from his lower body. A black shadow smashed towards Xiaohua's lower body faster than a stick.
"Damn it!" Xiaohua was angry.
He leaned his body slightly and dodged the black shadow with extreme agility.
Moreover, he stretched out his hand and easily caught the black shadow.
This black shadow was furry and somewhat prickly. It was the fire ape's tail. Xiaohua pulled his hand and the fire ape's several zhang tall body immediately fell down. Xiaohua's other hand slightly clenched and smashed towards the fire ape's lower back with all his strength.
"Boo!" A loud sound was heard.
A series of sounds came from the fire ape's body.
"Roar!" It was even louder than the previous scream.
The fire ape couldn't help but cry out. Boom, boom, boom. Xiaohua wasn't stingy. He raised his leg and stepped on the fire ape's thigh. His right hand continuously struck towards the fire ape's waist. Sparks flew out from the fire ape's fur. Moreover, the place where Xiaohua hit was twitching. It was obvious that the fire ape was in extreme pain. However, Xiaohua was firmly stepping on it. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't move.
"Roar!" Another loud cry.
A stream of crimson-red blood flowed down from the fire ape's body. "Evil creature, why aren't you leading the way?" Seeing this, Xiaohua withdrew his fist and flew into the air as he cursed. Gee, the fire ape mumbled a few times. How could Xiaohua be impatient? He started chanting again.
"Awoo, awoo." The fire ape could not help but hold its head and wail again.
However, this time it was quick-witted again. It hurriedly flew up, stepped on flames, and flew away.
"Humph,"
Xiaohua coldly snorted. His mouth didn't stop as he chased after the fire ape. However, after flying for about 100 miles and arriving at a few mountain peaks, the fire ape stopped moving forward. It hung its arms pitifully and looked helpless.
"I still have to die."
Xiaohua sneered and chanted another incantation, causing the fire ape to roll around in the valley for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. The fire ape was about to roll its eyes, but it still didn't fly up. Obviously, the fire ape also couldn't find the whereabouts of Hanba. Xiaohua was speechless. He fiercely kicked the fire ape and kept it into his spirit storage pouch. Then he looked around.
Under the fire ape's lead, he had already flown far away.
He released his Buddhist perception and roughly looked around.
Within 200 miles, there was no sign of Fairy Xianxia or Li Zongbao.
"Damn it, what is this?" Xiaohua was angry. He raised his head and roared.
"Ah!"
Following Xiaohua's roar, countless heavenly lightning fell from the sky from his hands. Rumble! It was like rain falling down.
Kacha!
Tens of hundreds of thumb-sized heavenly lightning struck the mountain peaks around Xiaohua. Countless mountain rocks were smashed and rolled down the mountain. Countless dust flew up and covered the entire mountain peak. Even the countless withered trees and vegetation were ignited and turned into powder.
They were blown up into the sky along with the dust.
Xiaohua turned to look at the mess that he had created.
Xiaohua slightly vented the anger in his heart.
Biting his dry lips, Xiaohua turned around and was about to fly back to find Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia. At this moment, "Wah!" several beast cries sounded. A few ripples similar to divine perception swept over.
Then a clear voice sounded. "Where did this Dao sect cultivator come from?
How dare you behave so atrociously in my Meng Mountains? Are you tired of living? Spirit warrior? Soul perception?" Hearing this voice, Xiaohua turned his head to look. Between the two mountains, a white-winged spirit beast similar to the one Ho Yen was riding was flying over.
On top of it was a woman wearing strange clothes. She was waving a bone staff in her hand and looking at Xianxia coldly. This woman had dark skin and was very skinny. Although her eyes were big, her sharp mouth and monkey cheeks made Xianxia feel uncomfortable. Of course it's me. When Xianxia saw the spirit warrior, an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. He was too lazy to use his divine perception. With a wave of his hand, tens of heavenly lightning bolts appeared in the sky. With a rumbling sound, they came crashing down on the female spirit warrior. You dare! Seeing so many heavenly lightning bolts, the woman's face changed greatly. She hurriedly waved the bone staff in her hand. A black gas was emitted from the bone staff. Tens of fist-sized ghost heads rushed out and lined up above the woman's head. Clearly, they were trying to block the heavenly lightning bolts that were similar to Xianxia's anger. Third sister. At this time, tens of similar spirit beasts appeared behind the woman. On top of these spirit beasts were tens of spirit warriors. When these spirit warriors saw the heavenly lightning above the woman's head, they all turned pale with fright. Without the slightest hesitation, they waved the bone staff in their hands. Hundreds of ghost heads appeared near the female spirit warrior and rushed up into the air. Rumble, 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 lightning flashed. In the instant that the 100 ghost heads appeared, they came crashing down. Under the tens of heavenly lightning bolts, the ghost heads didn't even have the slightest chance to struggle. In an instant, they disintegrated. However, the black smoke that came out of the ghost heads and the green light that came out of them were barely able to block the heavenly lightning. Hee hee, enemies really do meet on a narrow road. Xianxia sneered. Just now, a spirit warrior that fought me to the death left, and now you've sent over 10 more. This young master will send you all on your way. Thinking of this, Xianxia didn't say anything else. He slapped his hand and the yin-yang sword gourd flew out. With a point of his finger, the green and red executioner's primordial light soared into the sky. It was aimed at the neck of the female spirit warrior who had already lost her soul. The executioner's primordial light was extremely fast and sharp. The faint black smoke and the thin green light couldn't block it at all. Although the female spirit warrior was extremely ugly, her slender neck had a string of small white bones. It was dark and somewhat alluring. But this allure was powerless under the executioner's primordial light. It could only show the deathly whiteness of her life. Xianxia, have mercy. Seeing that the female spirit warrior's head was about to roll down under the executioner's primordial light, an anxious and pleasantly surprised voice came from afar. Ah? Xianxia was stunned. He hurriedly pointed his finger. With the SI sound, the 2 executioners' primordial lights stopped. It had just touched the female spirit warrior's skin. Traces of blood flowed down the female spirit warrior's pitch-black neck and dyed her pure white bones red. The female spirit warrior was already stunned. She didn't dare to move in the slightest. You are. Xianxia raised his eyes to look. Behind the female spirit warrior, a similarly dressed woman flew out on a soul beast. But this woman's skin was white and her face was also pretty. Moreover, in Xianxia's eyes, this face gave birth to a familiar feeling in his heart. But Xianxia blinked his eyes. He couldn't think of where he had seen this woman before. I am. A trace of joy flew out from the woman's face. But this joy disappeared in a flash. She said with a smile, You'll have to guess who I am. But I know that you are Xianxia. Your name? I already knew it. This. Xianxia was really at a loss. But shouldn't you first release this concubine's servant girl? The woman said with a smile, although her mouth was a bit rude, but it wasn't to the point where fellow Taoist Xiao would take her life as soon as you saw her, right? Fellow Taoist Xiao? Xianxia was even more stunned. What kind of spirit warrior would call a cultivator fellow Taoist? Looking at this woman's increasingly familiar face, Xianxia couldn't think of where he had seen her before. Seeing the disappointment on this woman's face, Xianxia suddenly came to a realization. He hurriedly said, Io? You're Zai? How are you a woman? Hee, you can still remember? The woman laughed. But then she shook her head slightly. Unfortunately, this concubine's name is Zimming, not Zai. Zai is only this concubine's twin brother. Ha, so that's how it is. Xianxia suddenly realized. He clapped his hands and said, I knew it. If it really was Zai, There's no way I wouldn't recognize him.
While speaking, Xiaohua pointed a finger. The death beam flew back into the yin yang sword gourd. When the death beam left the woman's neck, she instantly collapsed on the soul beast. Her bones were soft and her muscles were numb. It was difficult for her to get up. In this world, not everyone could face life and death calmly. Xiaohong, why aren't you thanking young Master Xiao? Ziming scolded the woman. The woman struggled to get up, but she couldn't.
She could only whisper, "This servant thanks." "Don't." Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and bowed. "This has nothing to do with you.
It's all this Xiao's fault. I'm the one who should apologize.
Good, Ziming clapped his hands and said. Young Master Xiao, no wonder Zai has been praising you since he came back from Sky Patrol City.
It turns out that you're really as magnanimous and pure as he said. This kind of apology is easy to say, but it's extremely difficult to do.
Zai, don't mention it.
Xiaohua smiled bitterly and waved his hand. It's clearly this Xiao's fault. How can it be this lady's fault? How can this kind of thing affect one's character? Then, Xiaohua looked at Ziming and hesitated for a moment before saying, this Xiao always thought that Zai was a disciple of an aristocratic family in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. I really didn't expect him to be a citizen of Meng Mountain. How is he now? Chapter 2852.
Yes, he's very good,
Ziming said with a smile. As soon as he came back, he excitedly talked to me about young Master Xiao. He said that the trip to Sky Patrol City was worth it. I didn't expect that there would be a dragon among men like young Master Xiao in the Dao sect.
Aha!
Xiaohua's face was a little red. He coughed twice and said, Zai is also the only confidant I've met in my life. I came to Million Mountain Meng to see Zai. But I have some urgent matters to attend to. If Ziming leaves Zai's message, I'll go see him when I'm free. Ziming only came to her senses now.
Looking at the curious maidservants around her, she waved her hand.
Most of these maidservants had smiles on their faces as they controlled their soul beasts to hide. Seeing that all the maidservants had left, Ziming smiled and said, Young Master Xiao, I'm very curious. How did you come to Million Mountain Meng? If you don't have any special secrets, why don't you tell me? No matter what, I'm still a person of Meng Mountain. Who knows, I might be able to help you. Xiaohua frowned and hesitated. He and Ziyi had met by chance and had only met once. Although they could be considered close friends, it was not to the extent of entrusting their lives to each other. Although Ziming and Ziyi were twin siblings, they were not the same person after all. Besides, Ho Yan's soul beast was the same as Ziming and the others. Even the bone staff and the ghost head were the same. Who knew what kind of relationship Ziming had with Ho Yan? Seeing Xiaohua hesitate, Ziming smiled and said, I'm Zai's twin brother. Usually, our hearts are connected. Young Master Xiao doesn't need to be afraid. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. Ziming, you're not Zai. If Zai was here, I would naturally be honest with you. But you're Ziming. Although you're my twin brother, do you think I can explain it to you? As expected. Ziming wasn't angry when she heard that. Instead, she smiled and said, Zai said, young Master Xiao is really unique. Most people would avoid saying such offensive words, or they would say it in a roundabout way. Young Master Xiao, on the other hand, is so straightforward. You've really opened my eyes. Haha, this Xiao regards Zai as a close friend.
It is precisely because of this kind of magnanimous heart and this kind of straightforward words that Ziming and Ziyi are so similar that this Xiao can't not speak to Ziming like this.
If Ziming feels that this is inappropriate, I ask for Ziming's understanding. Xiaohua didn't hold back and said straightforwardly. You flatter me. Ziming pursed her lips and smiled. Young Master Xiao is someone my younger brother admires, so I naturally admire him. How about this, young master? Think about it and see if there's anything I can help you with. A fence and 3 poles. I have some people who can help with small matters. All right, Xiaohua hesitated for a moment before telling him about Xiao Mao being kidnapped by Hanba. As for Ho Yan and Yi Yu, he didn't mention a single word. What? Hanba? Ziming was stunned when he heard this. This item has been extinct in Meng Mountains for many years. How is it possible?
At this point, Ziming suddenly realized something and smiled apologetically.
Young Master Xiao, it's not that I don't believe you. It's just that I've been busy with other things recently and haven't been in the shaman village. The appearance of Hanba is really too strange. I have to think about it. Also, don't worry, young master. I'll immediately pass down the order to immediately let the spirit warriors of my shaman village search for Hanba's whereabouts.
Once they find it, they'll immediately inform young master.
As he spoke, Ziming tapped the spirit beast under his feet with the bone staff in his hand.
The spirit beast let out a GG sound as if it was summoning the maidservant who had just left.
Then, Ziming raised his head and smiled at Xiao Hua. Looking at Ziming's grin, Xiao Hua's heart was slightly warmed. Ziming's smile was almost exactly the same as Ziye's. It immediately reminded him of that day in Sky Patrol City, when the two of them were singing loudly under the wind and snow. In the blink of an eye, nearly 10 years had passed. The sword battle was coming to an end, and this mysterious Ziye's face was also revealed. Alas, fate makes fools of people. I thought Ziyi was a disciple of a cultivation family. Although there's a difference in status, he's still a confidant. I didn't expect Ziyi to be a soul cultivator. But he and I. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked. Ziyi has already made it clear that a hero shouldn't ask about his origin. He already knows that I'm a cultivator of the Dao sect. From what I see now, Ziyi might be a person from the shaman village who's not inferior to Xiao Mao's background. He's much more honorable than me. He didn't care about my origin and bent over to befriend me. What else do I have to think about? Isn't this kind of friendship that doesn't ask about one's origin and origin much purer than those with ulterior motives? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's lips curled into a smile. He also looked at Ziming, as if he also saw Ziming as Ziyi. Ziming blushed a little under Xiao Hua's gaze. He glanced down and whispered, "By the way, young Master Xiao, aren't you participating in the sword battle in Sky Patrol City? Why did you suddenly come to Meng Mountains?"
It's a long story.
Xiao Hua understood and didn't hide it anymore.
Just as he was about to speak, there was a burst of chirping and a group of maidservants flew back with smiles.
Immediately after, Ziming's face became serious and he gave the order.
Among the dozen or so servant girls, other than a few who were slightly older, the others were all sent out by Ziming.
The girl who had almost been killed by Xiao Hua was also among them. When Ziming gave the order, he used the language of Meng Mountains, which was similar to what Xiao Mao had said earlier. When the maidservants heard this, their faces showed respect and they quickly left to carry out the order. After everyone was sent out, Ziming smiled and said, "Young Master Xiao, if you have time, why don't you go to a place with me? If there's news about Xiao Mao, it'll be convenient for me to inform you. Otherwise, Meng Mountains is so big. Although you have a message talisman, it won't be easy for you to find him." This. Xiao Hua hesitated and said, "Actually, Xiao Mao isn't the only one who came with me to Meng Mountains. There's also Li Zongbao from Utopia faction and Hongxia Fairy from Huanhua sect." I was going to say, Ziming laughed and said, "Young Master doesn't need to say anything. If you don't want to go with me, I won't force you." However, from what Ziyi said, young Master seems to be an expert in alchemy. Although the place I'm going to has nothing to do with alchemy, there are still some connections. If young Master can go, you might be able to gain something. So it's like that. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. He knew that Ziming meant well. But the problem was, Xiao Mao's life and death were uncertain. How could he go with Ziming with peace of mind? Ziming seemed to understand Xiao Hua's hesitation and said, "That Hanba is an ancient iron corpse. He has the bloodline of the Hembai and is very good at hiding. With young Master's cultivation, I'm afraid it won't be easy to find him. Only us Meng Mountain soul warriors can use special soul techniques to find clues. Instead of searching for a needle in a haystack, why don't you let my subordinates go? Once there's news, it won't be too late for young Master to go." Ancient iron corpse? Hembai bloodline? Xiao Hua was slightly surprised and thought, isn't Xiao Mao also of the Hembai bloodline? Right, wasn't that Hanba chasing after me? I'm afraid it wanted to find the fire ape. But when it saw Xiao Mao, it immediately abandoned the fire ape and took Xiao Mao away. If it had a strange killing intent toward Xiao Mao, it would have killed him just now. Then, it must have something to ask of Xiao Mao. Since that's the case, Xiao Mao's life might not be in danger. Of course, what Ziming said is very true. How am I going to find him? Even if I kill that fire ape, it won't be able to find Hanba's whereabouts. Why don't I let her subordinates go and find him? Once there's news, I'll hurry over. After making up his mind, Xiaohua smiled and said, I can naturally go with Ziming to that place. However, my fellow Taoist also wants to go. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. Ziming's face was very happy and said, Master Go Qin is an expert. In her eyes, there's not much difference between cultivators, swordsmen and soul warriors. If you go, she might be very happy. Master Go Qin? Xiaohua stared blankly. He, Ziming knew she had a slip of the tongue and said with a smile, We'll talk about this on the way. Since we have to go anyway, there's no need to hide it from the young master. Then, Ziming looked around in an exaggerated manner and asked, But, where are the two fellow Taoists of the young master? Sigh. At this point, Xiaohua drooped his head like a defeated rooster and said, I was only focused on chasing Hanba and lost them. Ziming smiled and said, It's okay. Watch this concubine's methods. As he spoke, Ziming took out his bone staff and began to chant. Xiaohua could tell that his voice was an extremely difficult dialect of Meng Mountain. However, as the dialect was being chanted, rays of green light appeared. These green lights were touched by the bone staff and turned into fireflies. As the fireflies disappeared into the air, wisps of black smoke emerged. In the end, the black smoke condensed into hundreds of ghost heads in midair. Although these ghost heads were small, their faces were clear. They had small noses and small eyes and looked very cute. They were completely different from the ghost heads summoned by Ho Yan and the others. Looking at Ziming giving orders in a low voice with a smile, the many ghost heads scattered and flew away. Like a group of naughty children or a group of sparrows looking for food, Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Why are they all ghost heads? Why are Ziming's ghost heads so cute? Young Master Xiao, in a moment, there will be news of young Master Li and Miss Xianxia. Ziming saw Xiaohua smile and said shyly, Thank you, Ziming. Xiaohua couldn't help but say, I wonder if Ziye's ghost heads are also so cute? When you see Ziyi, you can ask him yourself. Ziming covered her mouth and smiled. She looked at Xiaohua with interest. Xiaohua smiled and didn't ask any more. Chapter 2853. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, a lot of ghost heads flew back one after another. They gathered in front of Ziming and started chattering. Xiaohua was baffled when he heard this. However, from Ziming's smiling face, Xiaohua knew that there was news about Fairy Xianxia and Li Zongbao. Sure enough, Ziming raised his head and said, Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. The two esteemed guests are about 100 miles away. Good. Ziming, please wait a moment. Xiaohua cupped his hands and flew in the direction Ziming pointed, somewhat impatiently. Master. Xiaohua had just flown up when a woman hurriedly said, This person is a Dao sect cultivator. Master is going to visit Master Qin. How can you bring them along? I know that Master's matter is extremely important. This is the last chance. If Master angers the Master, everything will be for naught. I naturally know this. Ziming looked at Xiaohua's back and said faintly, In this world, who knows the origin? Who knows where to go? Who knew who they would meet here? Who is the one who sent us off? This world is so big, to actually meet him here. At this point, Ziming smiled faintly and said, Actually, this person is an extremely famous alchemist in the Dao sect. Perhaps he will be of some use to me. If you bring him along, perhaps you will have some confidence in this matter. I understand. The woman suddenly understood and nodded and retreated. Ziming snorted coldly and shook his head as he watched the maidservant leave. He seemed to be extremely disdainful. Subsequently, many more ghost heads returned, but Ziming did not ask any more questions. He gently tapped the bone staff and the ghost heads turned into black smoke and fell into the bone staff. After a while, 3 figures appeared in the distant horizon. It was Xiaohua, Li Zongbao, and Fairy Xianxia. Ziming raised her head, and her right eyebrow slightly raised. An indescribable feeling appeared in her bright eyes. Seeing Ziming behaving in such a manner, Fairy Xianxia smirked as well. A hint of enmity could be seen in her eyes, and the expression on her face spoke for itself. On the other hand, Ziming no longer had the same expression as before. He cupped his hands and said, "Brothers, please. I am a woman, I can't be considered a brother." Without waiting for Li Zongbao to reply, Fairy Xianxia lightly said, "If it's convenient for you, just call me Dao friend." "Hee, that's not impossible," Ziming said with a smile. "Since my younger brother addressed young Master Xiao as fellow Taoist that day, I will also address you as fellow Taoist." Fairy Xianxia looked at Xiaohua in annoyance. If she had not met Ziming here, Xiaohua might not have told her about Ziyi. Thinking about the mysterious Jiuxia who had just left, and then looking at Ziming who was also of noble birth and extraordinary appearance, Fairy Xianxia felt an indescribable sense of crisis. "Haha," Xiaohua said helplessly. "Senior apprentice brother Li, this is my old friend's twin sister, Ziming. That Ziyi looks very similar to her. Junior brother has already told us about Zai. He's a mutant. If I meet him, I will also make friends with him." Li Zongbao was straightforward, bowing and saying, "Since he's your old friend, then he's also my old friend. Ziming, you don't have to be so courteous. I will still have to rely on Ziming and Ziye's strength in the millions of Meng Mountains. Rest assured, young Master Li." Ziming lightly waved her hand. "As long as it's young Master Zhao's matter, Ziyi will definitely do his best. Even if it's Ziming, I will definitely not shirk from it." Seeing Ziming's indifferent attitude towards Li Zongbao, and her praise for Xiaohua, Fairy Xianxia also said, "I hope, things will be as you said, that we can find Xiao Mao's whereabouts as soon as possible." "Rest assured, Miss Xianxia," Ziming lightly said, "as long as it's within Meng Mountains, Ziming will definitely be confident." "I hope." Fairy Xianxia gave a tit-for-tat reply. Ziming, Xiaohua was very sensitive to Fairy Xiaoxia's unfriendly tone. He lightly sighed and reminded, "My 2 Dao friends are already here, shouldn't we leave now? If we can help Ziming before we find Xiao Mao, I will also be happy." Young Master Xiao is too considerate." Ziming heard Xiaohua's words and was very happy. She said, "If Ziming has anything to ask of young Master Xiao, I hope that young Master Xiao will not stand by and do nothing." "Rest assured. Ziming is Ziye's elder sister. Why would I stand by and do nothing?" Xiaohua hurriedly explained when he heard Fairy Xia's cold snort. However, no one knew whether these words were directed at Ziming or Fairy Xianxia. Young Master Xiao, please." Ziming did not care who Xiaohua was talking to. She slightly bowed, and the spirit beast beneath her flew up and came to Xiaohua's side. "Oh, Ziming, please lead the way." Seeing Ziming actually inviting him onto her spirit beast, Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "We will just fly by the side." "How can that be?" Ziming faintly glanced at Fairy Xianxia and said, "Esteemed guests have come from afar, how can I let you be tired? It is better for you to sit on my spirit beast." Hearing Ziming refer to herself as a concubine, Fairy Xianxia said indifferently, "Ziming, we are cultivators, what is the reason for sitting on your spirit beast? We also have a flying magic item." After saying that, Fairy Xianxia looked at Li Zongbao. She had really forgotten who was the one who kept the flowing cloud flying ship. Seeing Fairy Xianxia looking at him, Li Zongbao raised his eyebrows. Although he did not say anything, the expression on his face said, "How can such a precious item like the flowing cloud flying ship be with me?" Indeed, Xiaohua laughed bitterly and took out the flowing cloud flying ship from the space. Under the influence of his magic power, the flying ship slowly expanded. "This is the Dao Sex flying magic item? This is the first time I have seen it. Miss Xianxia, can I sit on it?" Ziming ignored Xiaohua and asked Fairy Xianxia instead. Fairy Xianxia was at a loss for words. She could not refuse so obviously and could only hesitate. "You are a spirit warrior, Do you think you can sit on it? This concubine can even speak the language of cultivators. Naturally I can sit on a flying magic item. Ziming said with a smile. He urged his spirit beast to fly above the flowing cloud flying ship and jump down from the sky. His body was strong and agile. Fairy Xianxia pursed her lips. Although she did not express any dissatisfaction on the surface, it was obvious that her gaze was full of disdain for this uncivilized woman who did not know etiquette. Seeing Fairy Xianxia roll her eyes after pursing her lips, Xiaohua was very tactful. After boarding the flowing cloud flying ship, he immediately hid in a corner, neither controlling the flying ship nor speaking. If it was the Shui of the past, she might have jumped on the flying ship, called out, "Husband," and sat beside Xiaohua sweetly. But Fairy Xianxia knew that she could not do that. She just stood by the side of the flying ship and looked at the desolate surroundings, thinking about something. Li Zongbao was helpless. This flying ship could only be driven by him. "Miss Ziming, please lead the way." Li Zongbao looked at Ziming, who had a strange expression on her face, and said lightly, "It's in that direction." Ziming nodded and pointed in a direction. Then, she gave a few instructions to the maids on the left. After the maids agreed, she said to Li Zongbao, "This concubine will follow Mr. Li, these maids will follow soon." Li Zongbao responded indifferently. Then, he urged the flowing cloud flying ship to go in the direction Ziming pointed. The maids rode their spirit beasts and flew behind the flying ship. In a moment, they disappeared without a trace. The atmosphere on the flying ship was a little strange. Xiaohua sat cross-legged in a corner of the flying ship, holding a jade pendant in his hand. He seemed to be comprehending a cultivation technique. Fairy Xianxia had been staring forward since she boarded the flying ship. Ziming stood in the middle of the flying ship, and did not seem unfamiliar. Only Li Zongbao was a little busy. He sat cross-legged and focused on driving the flying ship. After the time it took to eat a meal, Ziming's mouth curled up slightly. She asked with concern, "Mr. Xiao, when you met Hitorigami earlier, did it hurt your spiritual sense?" Xiaohua heard and opened his eyes slightly. He nodded and said, "That's right. That Hitorigami's divine ability is indeed powerful. I was not careful and fell for it." "If that's the case, then it's still very fortunate." Ziming smiled and said, "But if Mr. Spiritual Sense is burned by Hitorigami for a long time, I'm afraid it will be permanently damaged." At this point, Ziming's face changed slightly. She said anxiously, "Mr. Xiao, could it be that you, darling Xiao?" Although Fairy Xianxia had been facing outside the flying ship, her ears were already perked up. When she heard Ziming's question, she sneered in her heart. She also knew about Hitorigami's divine ability. Her spiritual sense was also injured by Hitorigami, but it was fine now. However, when she heard Ziming's question and saw Xiaohua's situation, she immediately understood. She panicked and turned around. Could it be that your spiritual sense was injured by Hitorigami?" Sigh. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and sighed. "After I separated from you all, I met Hitorigami. Without my spiritual sense, where do you want me to go to find you all?" "Darling Xiao." Fairy Xia's eyes were filled with tears. She instantly thought of the time when they were in danger. Xiaohua's spiritual sense was so weak. How could she not know that Xiaohua was risking his spiritual sense being permanently damaged to find her? Fairy Xia did not want to be angry anymore. She floated to Xiaohua's side and asked anxiously, How is your spiritual sense now? How else can it be?" Xiaohua released his spiritual sense and scanned everyone. Fairy Xia sensed for a moment and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. At this moment, Xiaohua's spiritual sense was very weak. It was not as vast as before. His spiritual sense even felt like it was riddled with holes. It was seriously injured. "Darling Xiao." Fairy Xia was so distressed that she did not know what to say. Chapter 2854. It's all my fault. Fairy Xia lowered her head and said, "If I didn't ask you to come to Meng Mountain, you wouldn't have suffered such a serious injury." That's right, divine sense is the weapon of a cultivator's Naiwan palace. It's the most delicate. Ordinary injuries are difficult to heal, let alone such a serious injury. Ming had made it clear that Hidorigami's injury would be permanent. Without some secret technique, it would be impossible to heal. Fairy Xia's expression changed. Ming was also shocked. She frowned as if she was thinking about something. But the more she thought, the tighter her frown became. It seemed like she couldn't come up with a good idea. "It's nothing." Xiaohua wanted to comfort her, but when he saw the concerned look on Fairy Xia's face, he retracted his hand slightly and kept the jade pendant in his hand into his space. He then said, "It's just a spiritual injury. Let it rest for now. Perhaps there will be a chance to heal it in the future." Sigh, Master Xiao is indeed magnanimous. Ming's eyes flashed with concern. She sighed and said, "I'm a spirit warrior. Although I've dabbled in the spells of the Dao sect, I'm not familiar with divine sense. But I know that, to heal divine sense, it's extremely difficult." Speaking of this, Ming's eyes lit up again, and he said happily, "By the way, Master Kuchin is experienced and knowledgeable. Maybe she has some secret skills."
"Young Master Li, let's hurry over, the sooner the better." "Senior, let me help you."
Fairy Xia heard and quickly ran to Li Zongbao's side. She sat cross-legged and channeled her magic to help Li Zongbao control the airship. "Sister, don't be anxious," Ming whispered. "We have time. When we get to the master, I'll definitely ask her for help." "Thank you, sister." Fairy Xia's face reddened. She was embarrassed by her previous actions.
She said, "I'll leave Xiaohua's matter to you. However, you have to take priority. Even if Master Kuchin doesn't agree, when we return to Xi, we'll still be able to find the secret technique. Both matters are very important." Ming smiled. "And Master Zhao's matter has to be put before mine." Fairy Xia was stunned. She didn't understand and asked curiously, Why? "Forgive me for not being able to speak of this matter."
Ming shook her head slightly, then turned around to look at Xiaohua and said, "However, since young Master Xiao is my younger brother's best friend, I will definitely work hard." "All right." Fairy Xia nodded her head and looked at Xiaohua, her eyes filled with worry.
Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged, was overjoyed. His spiritual will was indeed severely injured, and the injuries were just as Fairy Xia and the rest had seen.
However, in addition to his spiritual force, he also had Buddhist awareness. Even if he couldn't use his spiritual force, couldn't control magic treasures, and couldn't speak, would he still have Buddhist awareness? Was there still any innate primordial water? Do you still have the wishful wand? What about Dream Slayer and Mountain Splitter? Actually, the injury to his spiritual force didn't have much of an effect on his sacred art. As for the healing that Fairy Xia and Ming were worried about, if it was before Xiaohua met Jiuxia, he would have to worry about it. However, with Jiuxia's sun-shrouding art, all these difficulties weren't difficult at all. That was the sun-shrouding art that was comparable to the ancient divine fire art. It specialized in cultivating the primordial spirit and strengthening one's spiritual force. Repairing the spiritual force was just a minor detail. What Xiaohua had comprehended earlier was the content of the sun-shrouding art. Previously, Xiaohua wanted to explain to Fairy Xia and Ming. However, Fairy Xia actually took the initiative to talk to Ming out of concern for him. Although it was his first time meeting Ming, and there wasn't anything that Fairy Xia was thinking about, wasn't it better to coax Fairy Xia to divert her attention? Besides, this sun-shrouding art was given by Jiuxia. Would Xiaohua dare to explain it to Fairy Xia? When I see that Grandmaster, no matter what kind of secret technique he has, I'll just tell my wife that I got it. Xiaohua thought to himself and began to comprehend the sun-shrouding art word by word. Seeing Xiaohua close his eyes and meditate, Fairy Xia gradually calmed down.
She knew that this husband of hers had always been mysterious.
She had also practiced the god's guidance before. Even though it didn't have the effect of repairing one's spiritual will, but since Xiaohua had the god's guidance, he might have other secret techniques as well. After feeling relieved, Fairy Xia sighed with emotion that Xiaohua wasn't afraid of the pain of his spiritual force being burned for her. Her heart was filled with sweetness again. In such a good mood, Ming was no longer an eyesore. Therefore, not long after, Fairy Xia and Ming chatted casually and slowly became familiar with each other. Grandmaster Kuchin's residence seemed to be very far away. The flowing cloud airship flew straight for half a day, But Ziming didn't say anything to change direction. Seeing the sun gradually setting in the west and some birds and beasts starting to return to their nests, Ziming stood up and sighed. Back then, my Meng Mountain was prosperous. Under the setting sun, it was also abnormally lively. How could it be desolate now? With such a decline, it's not strange that the drought demon appeared. That. Fairy Xianxia opened her mouth and wanted to tell Ziming about the corn. But after thinking about it, this was a matter between Xiao Mao and Xiao Hua. Since Xiao Hua didn't tell Ziming, she didn't dare to say more. She stopped halfway. "Oh right, Miss Ziming." At this moment, Li Zongbao, who had been silent all this time, spoke. "Are you a citizen of Hutu's stronghold?" Ziming glanced at Li Zongbao. Her attitude was obviously not as warm as when she was with Xiao Hua. She replied indifferently. "Young Master Li seems to know the situation of my Meng Mountain very well. I just found out about it." Li Zongbao didn't think much of it and replied. "The Meng Mountain region near Huan country isn't big. There are only the descendants of the great god Shibai and the great god Hutu. Since Xiao Mao is a citizen of Shibai, Ziming's accent is different from Xiao Mao's, and the extravagance is so grand. Naturally you are a descendant of the great god Hutu." "Yes, that's true." Ziming nodded. Meng Mountain is dominated by the descendants of the two great gods. The descendants of the other great gods are all in Meng Mountain. Or perhaps, there are also some of our citizens in there. I would like to ask. Li Zongbao slightly worded his words and asked again. "The 12 great gods of Meng Mountain, who are they?" Young Master Li seems to be very concerned about the matters of Meng Mountain. Ziming was a little unwilling to answer. However, as a junior, if there isn't an urgent matter, I won't casually mention the name of Meng Mountain's god slayer. Otherwise, I will be punished by the sacred beast. Sacred beast? Li Zongbao raised his eyebrows slightly. He hadn't asked for the names of the 12 great gods, and now a sacred beast had appeared. If young Master Li is interested in these matters, you can ask Xiao Mao. Ziming seemed to refuse to answer. Actually, Li Zongbao bit his lips and said in a low voice, "I've heard that there is a mysterious technique in Million Meng Mountain that can revive the dead. And I've seen young lady Ziming holding a bone staff. You should be able to control ghosts, so I would like to know if the descendants of the great god Hutu have such a technique?" Yes, this was the main purpose of Li Zongbao's visit to Million Meng Mountain. Even if Ziming didn't want to answer, he still had to ask. Ziming was slightly stunned. She had never used the ghost-taming technique in front of Li Zongbao and Fairy Xianxia. However, she only needed to ponder for a moment to understand that this was just Li Zongbao's guess. "That's right," Ziming admitted frankly. "The descendants of the 12 great gods of Meng Mountain all have their own secret divine abilities. I'm the descendant of the Hutu stockade, so I naturally know the ghost-taming technique. However, as far as I know, the technique that can revive the dead that young Master Li mentioned, I'm afraid it doesn't exist." At this point, Ziming raised her head slightly and looked at the Million Meng Mountain that was gradually shrouded in darkness. She said faintly, "Death is like this darkness. Sooner or later, it will cover the earth. Even if there is light after the darkness, but how can it be so easy to revive the dead?" Li Zongbao felt a chill in his heart. However, when he heard Ziming's last sentence, he became anxious again. Could it be? There is such a god in noble shaman stockade? I'm willing to beg this great god with everything I have. Humph, other than the 12 great gods, who in Meng Mountain dares to call themselves great gods? Ziming sneered. Besides, it's a great divine ability to revive the dead. If it was an ancient great god, of course he could do it. But how could the people of today have such a divine ability? If young Master Li visits Meng Mountain and there is such a god, I'll do what young Master Li did and beg this god with everything I have. This. Li Zongbao was speechless. Sister. Fairy Xianxia knew what Li Zongbao was thinking. Seeing him embarrassed, she quickly said, "It's very difficult to revive the dead. However, we heard about the miraculous Million Meng Mountain in the country of Xi. That's why we came to look for it. Could it be that sister really doesn't have a way?" Ziming wasn't too cold to Fairy Xianxia. After giving her a glance, Ziming shook her head slightly. "Humans are the spirits of heaven and earth.
Their 3 souls and 6 spirits are all profound. We have inherited the witchcraft of our ancestors. Although we can temper our souls and use the power of souls to cast spells, it only touches the surface of the soul. How can we revive the dead? Ziming's bright eyes moved as she looked at Xiaohua. There was a hint of a smile in her voice as she said, "In this world, there is someone as infatuated as young Master Li, who wants to find a secret technique in Meng Mountain. If I'm not wrong, she must be young Master Li's sweetheart, right?"
That's right. That's right.
Li Zongbao admitted without hesitation, "I'm willing to exchange my life for her."
Sigh. Fairy Xianxia sighed. She was a little disappointed.
Ziming. Xiaohua, who was far away, was happy. He had comprehended the secret technique and had a foundation. He opened his eyes and said with a smile, "From your tone, it seems that many swordsmen have come to Meng Mountain to look for the secret technique?"
Hee. It's not just the swordsmen from Sword Domain. Many cultivators from the 3 kingdoms of cultivation have come as well.
Ziming replied with a smile. Moreover, Zai was invited to Sky Patrol City to help a cultivator called Tu Hong.
Chapter 2855. Tu Hong.
When Xiaohua heard this, he was shocked and asked curiously, "Ziyi went to Golden Spring Mountain to help Tu Hong revive Yuji?"
Young Master Xiao knows about this?
Ziming was surprised. "I don't think."
Ziyi told you about this?
Xiaohua laughed. "Everything in this world has a cause and effect. The intertwining of cause and effect is like a tangled knot. Therefore, there has never been a secret in this world that has been hidden for 10,000 years. Although Ziyi didn't tell me about Golden Spring Mountain, I have experienced life and death in Golden Spring Mountain, and I know some of Tu Hong's secrets, so I naturally know that Ziyi went to help Yuji."
I see.
Ziming laughed. Tu Hong is a cultivator in Sky Patrol City. His dual cultivation partner, Yuji, died because of him, so he vowed to revive Yuji. Your Dao sex methods are truly miraculous. I don't know what method he used, but he was actually able to preserve Yuji's soul from dissipating. Furthermore, he even used the ice frost mirror to preserve Yuji's corpse. This way Ziyi would be able to use some of his methods. But that Yuji didn't seem to be revived. Xiaohua had seen Yuji before and asked curiously, "What methods can Ziyi use?
How can he revive Yuji?"
Ziming pursed his lips and laughed. That day, Ziyi told the person clearly that he could only let Yuji speak and move, but he never said that he could revive Yuji. In fact, even so, it consumed a lot of Ziyi's soul power. If Tu Hong didn't have a soul treasure from Meng Mountain and paid a certain price, Ziyi wouldn't have made a trip to Sky Patrol City. At this point, Ziming laughed again. "Of course, if not for the trip to Sky Patrol City, I'm afraid Ziyi wouldn't have met young Master Xiao." A soul and a spirit. Li Zongbao was a little dazed, as if he didn't even have a soul and a spirit left. "Ziming, if someone has died for dozens of years, can they be like Yuji?" Xiaohua hesitated and asked. He knew that if he didn't confirm this matter, Li Zongbao would never be able to let it go.
Decades.
Ziming was shocked. Not to mention that the 3 souls and 6 spirits have completely dissipated. Furthermore, if it weren't for the Ice Abyss mirror, I'm afraid that even the corpse would have turned into white bones.
How could it possibly be refined into?
At this point, Ziming did not explain and vaguely said, "Actually, even if you take on the appearance of Yuji, does young Master Xiao think that it's the same as a living person? Rather than that, why should we disturb the peace of the people in the underworld?" Xiaohua was silent. He looked at Li Zongbao and said in a low voice, "Ziming, I've always been confused about something. In this world, is there such a thing as the 9 springs? There's an underworld? What about the netherworld?"
Of course there is.
Ziming chuckled and said, "The ancestor of my Hutu village, the great god Hutu, was the god of the netherworld. She transformed her body into a world and became a netherworld master. Otherwise, how could the people of my Hutu village have the ability to control ghosts?"
"Oh, there really is a netherworld?"
Xiaohua's mental energy array was activated. Then where is it?"
"Where? How would I know?"
Ziming shrugged her shoulders. Her expression was actually very similar to Ziyi's. "Other than the great god Hutu, or the 12 great gods, I'm afraid no one knows." "Then, Where did Ziming summon all the ghost heads from? Xiaohua broke the pot and asked.
I only need to wave my bone staff and chant an incantation. Those ghost heads will naturally come.
Ziming innocently blinked her eyes and said, As for where they came from, do I need to know?
That's true.
Xiaohua scratched his head.
Miss Ziming, I still have a question. Please enlighten me.
Li Zongbao's mind calmed down and asked again. The person who died for decades, can you see her?
Her situation in the netherworld?
Ziming hesitated for a moment and said, Actually, the so-called netherworld is just a title. I really don't know the specific situation. Hearing that Ziming did not directly refuse, Xiaohua knew that Ziming probably had some tricks up her sleeve. He looked at Li Zongbao and sighed. Alas, this matter is related to me.
Oh, is it related to young Master Xiao?
Ziming was startled and showed interest. Xiaohua roughly described Kai Zhuoxia's expression and sighed. That day, my cultivation was too shallow. I watched fellow Kai fall in the fire lake, but I couldn't do anything. So young Master Li is also such an infatuated person.
Ziming's attitude towards Li Zongbao changed a little.
She thought for a moment and said, I will naturally help young master achieve this wish. However, this matter is not too difficult, but there are also a few difficulties. Miss, please speak. Li Zongbao was overjoyed and said anxiously, I will listen to your instructions.
My Hutu stronghold has a soul treasure called Tongming.
It can realize the face of the person who died in young master's heart, or the situation of the so-called netherworld.
Ziming explained, but this item can only be used once every 10 years, and can be used by 3 people at a time. According to what I know, the last time it was used was around 10 years. But if it cannot be used, young master will have to wait.
Well said. Li Zongbao hurriedly nodded.
In addition, this item is sometimes very sensitive, but sometimes it is not effective. Young Master Li should not place too much hope on it.
Ziming said again.
I know.
If I can see Zhuoxia alive, even if there is a chance, I will not give up.
Li Zongbao hurriedly said. All right, since that is the case, I will go and see Master Kuqin. Young Master Li can follow me back to Hutu stronghold.
Tongming is my clan's sole treasure, and it is enshrined in the ancestral hall. Ziming smiled. Young Master Xiao can also go and see Zai. Good, Xiaohua clapped and said. I have long wanted to see Zai again.
As you wish.
Ziming smiled like a flower.
Sister, when senior brother Li uses it, can I watch from the side?
Fairy Xianxia hurriedly asked.
Of course not.
Ziming shook her head. But after young Master Li uses it, I can use it too.
Will I disturb Zhuoxia?
Fairy Xianxia was a little worried.
Sister also wants to see Kai Zhuoxia?
Ziming was stunned again, but then she understood. Sister's surname is also Kai?
That's right. My name is Kai Hongxia. Kai Zhuoxia is my sister. Fairy Hongxia nodded. Ziming was a little speechless.
She thought for a moment and smiled bitterly. This
sister does not know. You can try.
Then forget it, Fairy Hongxia shook her head. Don't do anything bad to sister.
Up to you. Ziming nodded slightly.
She had indeed never encountered such a situation. However, when she looked at Xiaohua again, Xiaohua had already closed his eyes and was preparing to meditate. Young Master Xiao, could it be that you don't have any relatives that you want to remember?
Ziming was a little surprised.
Because anyone who knew the effects of Hutu stronghold's Tongming would be pleasantly surprised or curious. They had never been as calm as Xiaohua. Xiaohua thought for a moment and shook his head. I really don't.
That's strange. Ziming was a little curious.
But Xiaohua smiled and closed his eyes again. Ziming tactfully didn't ask any more questions. She didn't have Xiaohua's drive to get to the bottom of things. The place where Master Qin lived was really far away. The flowing cloud airship flew for more than 10 days before they arrived at a place filled with dead trees. Along the way, Xiaohua asked Ziming a lot. After all, he was still worried about Xiao Mao. But Ziming shook her head. There was no news on the way, so she didn't know whether or not they found Hanba. Of course, Ziming's 2 reasons for comforting Xiaohua made Xiaohua feel a little relieved. The first reason was that if the Hutu stronghold spirit warriors couldn't find Hanba, then it was even more impossible for Xiaohua to find Hanba. And Xiaohua had seen Ho Yen of Hutu stronghold lead the spirit warriors to find Hanba, so he naturally believed Zi Ming. The second reason was that Zi Ming mentioned before. Hanba was an ancient iron corpse and had some relationship with the ancient god Shibai. And Xiao Mao was the descendant of the ancient god Shibai, so his bloodline was abnormally pure. Hanba might not have any bad intentions. Or maybe, Hanba wouldn't dare to have any bad intentions. And Xiaohua had thought about this before. He guessed that Hanba must have her reasons for kidnapping Xiao Mao. Therefore, Xiao Mao's life might not be in danger. But the problem was that even if Xiao Mao's life wasn't in danger, other dangers were worrying. If Hanba really kidnapped him and made him the wife of the stronghold, then it would be really unfortunate. But now, they were in the millions of Meng Mountains. Even if Xiaohua knew that Zi Ming was comforting him, he could only listen. There was a limit to human strength. He didn't have the ability to find Xiao Mao and Hanba at any time. At this time, Xiaohua missed Wuxia very much. It wasn't that he missed Wuxia's beauty, but Wuxia's seemingly omniscient ability. Maybe, after comprehending the complete sunshade art, I should also take a look at Wuxia's divination skills. Xiaohua looked at the withered yellow below the flying boat and couldn't help but think. There are so many withered trees here. It must have been a place with lush vegetation in the past. Fairy Xianxia said from the side. Zi Ming heard and sighed. Yes, there used to be mountains and rivers, flowers and grass here. There were also some beautiful soul beasts and feathered birds resting here. It was really a beautiful scene. I came here with Zai a few years ago and really liked this place. But now, the weather of Meng Mountains has changed greatly. Not only are the plants withered, even people find it difficult to survive. This. Xiaohua hesitated slightly and said, this might have a solution. What did young Master Xiao say? Zi Ming didn't seem to understand Xiaohua's meaning. At this time, Xiaohua had already thought it through. He nodded and said, what I mean is that the weather of the millions of Meng Mountains has changed greatly. The plants have withered. This is a natural phenomenon. But human survival might not be without a solution. Chapter 2856. Oh, Zi Ming nodded slightly. It's easy to say, but difficult to do. I can be considered experienced and knowledgeable, but I haven't been able to find a solution. This is one of the reasons why I came to find Master N.I. Qin. Actually, Zi Ming, you should hurry and find Xiao Mao. Xiaohua was ready to point out. He has the ability to solve this huge problem. Oh, is that so? Zi Ming was stunned, but then she suddenly realized. Right, isn't great god Shibai in charge of the weather? Xiao Mao has great god Shibai's bloodline, so he must have a solution. Zi Ming looked back again and smiled bitterly. My maid hasn't caught up yet. The previous order has already been passed down, so let's just wait. Alas, I'm afraid that's the only way. If Zi Yi was here, Xiaohua would give the seed to Zi Yi without hesitation, but Zi Ming wasn't Zi Yi, so Xiaohua was afraid that it would affect Xiao Mao. Turn that way. Zi Yi looked around casually and pointed in a direction. There's a beautiful platform after flying another 20 or so li. Just stop there. Xiaohua looked at the scenery on his left and right, which was more or less the same, and sighed in his heart. He couldn't figure out why Zi Ming would turn here. After flying for a while, they saw a mountain peak that looked like a platform. However, this mountain peak didn't have any trace of beauty. The entire mountain peak was jade-colored and looked like a large spirit stone from a distance. Xiaohua couldn't figure out what was so special about it. The flying boat landed on the mountain peak. The entire mountain peak was 1 li wide. It was abnormally flat, as if it had been cut by a giant axe. There wasn't a single extra stone. Naturally, there was no trace of anyone on such a flat mountain peak. Even the grass and trees were gone. Seeing Xiaohua and the others' confusion, Zi Ming smiled. This is the reception platform. Everyone who wants to meet Master N.I. Qin has to wait here respectfully for Master N.I. Qin's arrangements. Reception platform. Xiaohua was shocked. She's using this mountain peak as a reception platform? This Master N.I. Qin,
is really generous.
Yes, Master N.I. Chin often says that only by using heaven and earth as a furnace and the common people as the fire can one refine the world's weapon, Ziming said with a longing expression.
Heaven and earth can naturally be used as a furnace, but the common people are never fire.
When Xiaohua heard this, he was unhappy and said indifferently, "This kind of refining technique is a blood sacrifice." Hee, young Master Xiao, I'm afraid that my Meng Mountain's method of artifact crafting is different from your Dao Sec's.
Ziming grinned. Wait until you see Master N.I. Chin's refining skills, then you won't say that.
Maybe. Xiaohua jumped down from the flying boat and looked around before replying.
Sister, are you here to find Master Hua Qin to refine a weapon? Fairy Xianxia also flew down and asked tentatively.
Sigh, that's right.
Ziming sighed and said, this matter is very important to me, and it's so important that I can't disclose it.
Therefore I don't dare to tell you.
Everything will be clear when Master N.I. Chin comes.
All right. Fairy Xianxia saw that Ziming was very serious and did not dare to ask any more questions.
She followed Ziming and sat on the mountain peak. Li Zongbao kept the flowing cloud flying boat, glanced at Xiaohua, and sat down as well. A faint hot wind blew past from time to time. The sun was hanging in the sky like a fireball, and the sunlight shone directly. Not only did it shine on the four of them, but it was also reflected by the mountain peak, making the entire mountain peak hot. The four of them sat on the mountain peak as if they were sitting in a fire. Although Xiaohua and the others were cultivators, after a long time, their state of mind was also somewhat unstable. Nonsense, they had been sitting straight for half a day, and the scorching sun had already turned into the setting sun. No one would be too calm, right? Xiaohua silently circulated the sun-shrouding art that he had just comprehended, slowly repairing his divine sense. At the same time, he looked around, trying to see where the so-called Master N.I. Chin would appear from. Seeing the full moon rise and the stars twinkling, a long figure walked in front of everyone under the water like moonlight. The figure was a slightly fat old man. The old man's face was hidden in the darkness, and his white hair and beard flickered under the moonlight. His footsteps were very steady, and his voice was also very rhythmic.
Seeing the old man approaching, Ziming hurriedly got up and bowed. Master Qingming, may I ask if Master N.I. Chin is in the valley?
I am Master N.I. Chin's follower, and I am not a master. You can just call me Qingming.
What surprised Xiaohua and the others was that the old man's tone was very cold. Master has ordered that you are a noble of the Huta village, and you have the shaman token.
You don't have to wait here, and you can enter the valley by yourself.
After saying that, he did not wait for Ziming to reply, turned around and left, as steady and rhythmic as when he came.
Good, this Master N.I. Chin's imposing manner is not small. Xiaohua thought to himself. Looking at Ziming again, there was no trace of unhappiness on his face.
He whispered to Xiaohua, Young Master Xiao, be quiet, and follow me to pay respects to Master N.I. Chin.
Xiaohua whispered to him. Hearing this, Ziming was slightly startled, and then a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Out of Xiaohua's expectation, Ziming walked to the edge of the reception platform, and there was a flight of stairs that led straight to the foot of the mountain. This flight of stairs was one step after another, as if there was no end to it. Qingming, who had just appeared, walked step by step towards the foot of the mountain. Ziming is the nobleman of Hutu's stronghold. How can I be so respectful? Please get up quickly. Grandmaster Hua Qin's voice was very strange. It was a little hoarse and a little sharp. She reached out her hand to help Ziming up and said with a smile, I don't dare. Grandmaster is a senior, and Ziming is a junior. I don't dare to be disrespectful. Ziming stood up with Grandmaster Hua Qin's hand, then pointed at Xiaohua and the others and said, They are a few old friends of mine. They are cultivators of Shi Dao sect. I met them on my way here, and they happened to have something important to do, so I brought them here. It's okay. Grandmaster Hua Qin said with a smile. Everyone who comes from afar is a guest. I didn't know that you were coming, so I'm sorry for not coming out to greet you. It's a sin, a sin. Junior greets Grandmaster Hua Qin. Fairy Xianxia and the others did not dare to be negligent. They quickly stepped forward and bowed, then reported their names.
Xiaohua cast a sidelong glance at this grandmaster, but he had no choice but to follow the two and bow. In contrast to Grandmaster Hua Qin's pleasant expression, Qing Ming's face was always covered in frost. He looked at them coldly, waiting for Grandmaster Hua Qin to order him to bring something to entertain Zi Ming and the others. Only then did he turn and leave. Then, Zi Ming and the others were led into the cave by Grandmaster Hua Qin. This cave was somewhat similar to a Dao sect cultivator's cave abode. However, the furnishings inside were mostly white bones, vines and other objects. There were also some rather large oil lamps hanging on the walls. There were no clear flower stones that were commonly seen. Chapter 28:57. Since it was an oil lamp, it was hard to avoid the flickering of the flame. The flickering of light and shadow in the cave clearly showed the strangeness of soul cultivators. Deliberately mystifying. Xiaohua snorted again. As they sat down, a few young disciples immediately served them tea. Of course, these young disciples had long faces like Qing Ming. They came and left quietly, without even a smile. Little friend Li, little friend Xiao, and Miss Xianxia. Master Qin raised his teacup and smiled. My tea is not as good as the spirit tea of Taoist sect. Please don't mind. Please. I don't deserve it. Thank you. Li Zongbao answered briefly. He also raised his teacup and took a sip. After checking that there was nothing wrong with the tea, he swallowed it. Actually, I don't usually use tea. Master Qin was a straightforward person. It's just that some cultivators came from afar, so they asked my disciples to simply boil the mountain spring water and use it to complement the tea. Master, you're too polite. Fairy Xianxia smiled and said, currently, the millions of Meng mountains are extremely dry. It's good enough that we have spring water to boil the tea. Sigh, excellent. Master Qin sighed. This astronomical change is the beginning of a great change in the millions of Meng mountains. There will definitely be earth-shaking changes in the future. Unfortunately, those ordinary natives are innocent. I'm afraid they won't be able to escape from this catastrophe. Master, Zi Ming said anxiously, I came here today for two things. The first thing is this. All the people of Hutu Stronghold and Shibai Stronghold are struggling on the line between life and death. Although some soul cultivators have already set their sights on the millions of Meng mountains and led their disciples into Sword Domain, it is still a temporary solution. No one knows if Sword Domain can save the lives of the people of the 12 great gods. I hope that Master can be merciful and bestow a miraculous method to save hundreds of millions of natives. Sigh, if I had a miraculous method, I would have used it long ago. Why would I wait until now? Master Qin shook his head. This is an astronomical disaster. It's not something that can be solved by humans. Seeing that Master Qin was also helpless, Zi Ming was a little disappointed. Then, Master Qin asked, how's the battle between soul cultivators and swordsmen going? Perhaps killing our way into the sword domain isn't a solution, but it might be effective in the end? The war will be handled by Shang village and the others. Our Hutu village and Shibai village will not participate directly. Zi Ming shook his head slightly. However, I heard that the battle went very smoothly. Those swordsmen didn't have any power to fight back under the attacks of my soul warriors. Master Qin nodded slightly and said, actually, since Meng Mountain has undergone such a great change, the sword domain and the 3 kingdoms of cultivation must have undergone great changes as well. As he spoke, he looked at Li Zongbao and the others before continuing, the Dao sect's dharma is incomparably wondrous. Perhaps there's a better way? Li Zongbao looked at Fairy Xianxia, not knowing how to reply. Zi Ming continued, I've also sent my people to the Sword region and the 3 kingdoms. Even Elder Wu and Ji Man from the lower camp have been to these places. It seems like they are different from our Meng mountains. Even if they have a solution, it's not suitable for our Meng mountains. Sigh. Forgive this old man for being powerless in this matter. Master Qin sighed compassionately. His skinny figure seemed even smaller. However, Zi Ming's second request, this old man, will agree to it today. Really? Zi Ming was overjoyed. He almost jumped up and said, Master is indeed a trustworthy person. This junior thanks Master.
You're welcome. Master Qin laughed. You've brought the shaman token to me 3 times. Even if this old man doesn't owe your shaman village any favors, this item is related to the prosperity of the shaman village. This old man can't refuse. However, because this is my 3rd time crafting a soul treasure, this old man has to be more cautious. I need to prepare for a few more days. Furthermore, the soul falling lamp of your Hutu village is extremely mysterious. This old man doesn't have much confidence in repairing this soul treasure. You shouldn't be too happy too early. What? Master, this is already your 3rd time crafting a soul treasure? Hearing Master Qin's words, Ziming was not as happy as Master Qin said. Instead, he was extremely surprised and said, This junior thought that this was your 2nd time crafting. If I knew this was your 3rd time, this junior. If you knew this was my 3rd time crafting, you wouldn't have come? Master Qin laughed and said, This 3rd time will come sooner or later. Furthermore, this soul-falling lamp is extremely important to you and to the Hutu village.
This old man being able to repair this soul-falling lamp for the 3rd time is also the fate of this old man in this lifetime. Xianxia, who was at the side, was surprised. He said coldly, Master Qin, this is a little strange. You can only craft 3 soul treasures in your lifetime? Hee. Master Qin's face was abnormally dry. His skin was like a dried orange peel wrapped around his face, and his small head was comparable to a skeleton. Previously, Xianxia only noticed a scar across his face, but now, under the light, he could see it even more clearly. That smile was very strange, and coupled with that face, under the light, it was really somewhat repulsive. Young Master Xiao, Ziming could clearly hear the dissatisfaction in Xiaohua's voice, and even the misunderstanding. He hurriedly said, Meng Mountain's crafting of soul tools is different from the Taoist sect's crafting of magical treasures. Every time we craft a soul tool, we need to consume life essence. Especially for a soul treasure like the soul-falling lamp, the consumption is even greater. Although Grandmaster's crafting skill is one of the best in Meng Mountain, but he can only craft 3 soul treasures in his lifetime. After fixing the soul-losing lamp for me, his life essence will be exhausted, and he will return to the arms of Hutu goddess. Ah! There's such a saying? Xiaohua was stunned. Therefore, although there are many master craftsmen in Meng Mountain, most of them will not craft soul tools for others, let alone soul treasures. Ziming explained again, only Grandmaster Qin would not refuse anyone who came to his door to craft a soul tool. Therefore, Grandmaster Qin's reputation in Meng Mountain is very good. But later, because Grandmaster's life essence was used up too much, many soul warriors who received Grandmaster Qin's favor joined hands and sealed off the guest reception platform where Grandmaster Qin was. No one could look for Grandmaster Qin anymore. But the Grandmaster was merciful. He personally chiseled the stairway to heaven from the valley to the welcoming platform. He earnestly invited the spirit warriors and made an agreement. If there was someone who needed to craft a spirit armament, as long as they could sit on the welcoming platform for a sufficient amount of time and use the stairway to reach the valley, the Grandmaster would be able to craft the spirit armament for them. When the soul warriors saw Grandmaster Qin's determination, they knew that they could not stop him, so they all knelt on the ground and left. At this point, Ziming looked at the darkness outside the cave and sighed. This guest reception platform is said to be a test, but what's so difficult about it? Young Master Xiao has walked all the way here. How could you see any difficulties? This is actually Grandmaster Qin's merciful heart. If someone were to craft a soul tool, they would first carefully consider whether or not the soul tool was worth Grandmaster Qin's life essence. Whether or not the soul tool was worth Grandmaster Qin's life essence. Whether or not the soul tool was worth Grandmaster Qin's life. Young Master, don't look at Qing Ming's cold face. When we came down, we might be summoned by Hutu God. When Xiaohua heard this, he was shocked. He did not know the secrets of soul cultivators crafting soul tools, but he was originally a craftsman. If crafting a soul tool, and even if it was a soul tool, could actually shorten his lifespan, then to tell the truth, even if he was beaten to death, he would not craft it. What's more, the person who wanted to craft the soul tool had nothing to do with him. Not waiting for Ziming to finish speaking, Xiaohua stood up and walked in front of Grandmaster Qin. He bowed and said, Grandmaster Qin, this junior has misunderstood you. My previous words were offensive. Please forgive me, senior.
It's fine, Grandmaster Kuchin still had a smile on her face, but this smile made Xiaohua look very benevolent.
It was far from the strange smile from before.
Grandmaster Kuchin raised her hand, indicating for Xiaohua to rise. Although she didn't use any of the magic power that Dao sect cultivators often used, Xiaohua couldn't help but stand up. He was afraid that if he was any slower, he would blaspheme this magnanimous soul cultivation grandmaster. This junior has always believed that I do not judge a book by its cover.
But when it comes to this matter, this kind of narrow-minded thinking can't help but appear.
Xiaohua didn't try to hide anything.
He straightened up and spoke with a pained voice. Furthermore, this junior also knows some of the soul tool crafting techniques of the Dao sect.
Judging others by my own standards immediately magnified my originally dark thoughts. This concubine really admires young master's magnanimity. Ziming's eyes flashed with joy. If young master is a craftsman, then you will definitely have Grandmaster Kuchin's heart in the future. AI. This junior also has some distracting thoughts. Li Zongbao stood up and bowed. In front of Grandmaster Kuchin, this junior also has to bow. Don't. Grandmaster Kuchin laughed. Don't stand up, regardless of whether it's you or me. We are all humans, not gods. We cannot judge people by their hearts. This has always been the most important thing. This old one was also like this when he was young. But later on, with some luck, he slowly changed. You are so young, yet you can understand this. In the future, your actions will definitely surpass this old one. Grandmaster's bearing of risking her life to craft soul tools. Tiske, this junior will definitely not do that. Xiaohua's heart was calm, and his words were clear and bright. Don't speak so highly of this old one. Grandmaster Kuchin actually stretched out her thin and small hand. Ziming brought the Hutu Stockade shaman token to this old one. This old one didn't dare to disobey. Ha ha ha. Grandmaster must be joking.
Ziming shook his head slightly. The shaman token has no effect on Grandmaster.
Sister. Fairy Xianxia was about to stand up and bow again, but was stopped by Grandmaster Kuchin. At this moment, she found an opportunity to ask Ziming, why does Grandmaster Kuchin have to repair this soul loss lamp? And why did you consume life essence when you were crafting soul tools? Chapter 2858.
Hearing that, Ziming was not surprised and laughed. I have long wanted to explain this to young Master Xiao and the rest, and there are some matters related to young Master Xiao. But this matter is very important. Only with Master Kuchin here can I be at ease to explain. Even if my sister did not ask, I still have to say it. Of course, as for my soul refining method, I do not know the details, so I will have to ask Master Xiao to answer. I can only explain the reason why the fallen soul lamp must be restored to young Master Xiao and the rest.
Hearing that this matter was related to him, Xiaohua was startled, but he changed his mind, and immediately understood, and laughed and nodded. Xiaohua nodded, and Fairy Xianxia was once again in a fog, not knowing what was going on. At this time, Ziming patted his hand, and from his waist, a palm-sized brocade bag took out a black object. This object was about a foot tall, and was divided into two parts. The top part was a fist-sized weird beast head, and the bottom part was like a mountain peak, sharp at the top and round at the bottom. However, upon closer inspection, it was different. The strange beast's head split into three under the light. The three heads were clustered together in the middle, forming a beast's mouth. This beast's mouth was pointing straight at the sky. It seemed to have some fangs, but they couldn't see clearly. The beast's mouth was empty.
Also, the lower part of the fallen soul lamp had the same weird pattern. These patterns seemed to be white bones, but also like a skeleton, piled up together. It looked like a beast body.
The soul-stealing lamp was abnormally dark. When the light of the lamp landed on it, it was immediately absorbed.
There was no reflection, but the so-called shape was faintly discernible to the naked eye, as if it was the flickering light of the lamp.
Dog heads? The beast heads of the fallen soul lamp had a sinister and ferocious expression, but their shape was familiar. Xiaohua couldn't help but think to himself, a lamp made from three dog heads? Maybe the lamp was spat out from the dog mouths? This is my Ho-Tu stronghold spirit treasure, the fallen soul lamp. Ziming took out the soulfall lamp and twirled it in his hand. He proudly said, "This thing hasn't been lit up yet. If Master Kuchin can repair it this time, my Huta stronghold will immediately regain its former glory.
Young Master Xiao, even if the nascent soul cultivators of your Dao sect are very powerful, if they are enveloped by the lamp of the fallen soul, their lives will be at my disposal.
Oh my God, you're making my little heart jump. Xiao Hua pats his chest exaggeratedly and says with a smile. It seems that no matter what, this Xiao can't let Master Kuchin repair this fallen soul lamp. Or perhaps, this Xiao will have to consider whether or not to take the soul fall lamp. Back then, young Master Xiao used the soul falling lamp. Ziming said meaningfully, back then, young Master didn't even want it. What are you planning to do now? Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment, then immediately understood, and said with some disbelief, what? That day, Midnight actually took this soul lamp to Sky Patrol City? There was something like this in the storage pouch? This Xiao really can't believe it? Ziming smiles and looks at Master Kuchin. Refining a spiritual servant naturally requires this soul-falling lamp. Otherwise, Midnight wouldn't have brought this soul-falling lamp to Sky Patrol City. Spiritual servant? Hearing this, Xiao Hua squints his eyes, as if thinking of something. Sister, didn't you say that this soul-falling lamp hasn't been repaired? Fairy Xianxia asks curiously. Then how can Midnight use it? The soul-falling lamp is a spirit treasure. Legend has it that it was passed down by the great god Hutu. Its functions are mysterious. Although it hasn't been repaired and can't be lit up, it still has other small functions. Ziming smiles. If that's the case, why must it be lit up? Fairy Xianxia asks curiously. This soul-falling lamp hasn't been lit up for many years. Now that it's repaired, Master Kuchin's life will be sacrificed? Sigh, if I wasn't forced into a dead end, how could this concubine do this? Ziming sighs and loosens his hand. The soul-falling lamp flew into the air, and a strange black shadow covers the entire cave. Although this soul-falling lamp is a spirit treasure, it's also my Hutu stronghold's inherited treasure. Ziming looks up at the soul-falling lamp and says faintly, but if the next generation Elder Wu or Ji-Man wants to inherit, they must light up the soul-falling lamp. Only when the soul-falling lamp is lit up, will it mean that they have received the approval of the great god Hutu. Ziming is not talented, but I am the next Ji-Man candidate. If Ziming wants to become Ji-Man, the only way is to light up the soul-falling lamp. Ji-Man? Xiao Hua and the rest were stunned. They knew that Ziming's status in the Hutu stronghold was not ordinary, but they never thought that it would be so high up. Under one person, above 10,000 people, or even the one at the top. Ziming glanced at Li Zongbao and said faintly, moreover, according to our ancestors, if you control the soul-catching lamp, you might be able to control the mysteries of life and death, and you might be able to revive the dead. In this world, young Master Li is not the only one who wants to revive the dead. Ziming's voice is bitter. Floating in the cave. Following the shadow of the soul-falling lamp, a kind of desolation suddenly rises. Miss Ziming. Li Zongbao also sighs in his heart. He thinks for a moment and asks, this soul-falling lamp has been damaged for a long time, right? Otherwise, it would be impossible to ask Master Kuchin for help now. Perhaps Mrs. Second reason is the main point. Hearing this, Ziming does not hide and says with a nod, young Master Li is right. This second reason is the most important. As for this soul-falling lamp, it has been damaged for thousands of years. However, my Hutu stronghold has never had many children. The one who can inherit Elder Wu and Ji-Man has always been only one person. There will not be any disputes, and no one will care whether this soul-falling lamp is lit or not. But my generation is different. There is more than one person who is qualified to inherit Ji-Man or Elder Wu. Although I am in front of the line, if I can't light up the soul-falling lamp, I am afraid that I will not be able to sit firmly in the position of Ji-Man. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua nods, but suddenly asks again, Ziyi also has this qualification, right? That's right, of course Ziyi has it. Ziming smiles sweetly. But he will not fight with me. He came to the world a moment later than me. Moreover, since we are sensible, we have sworn together that we will not spoil the relationship between siblings because of this position. Young Master Xiao, don't worry. Even if I become the younger sister, I will definitely not fight with Ziyi.
And that's for the best.
Xiao Hua's heart suddenly relaxed, and he smiles and nods. In this world, all benefits are not as important as family. I know that young Master Xiao will say that. Ming smiles again. Actually, I have already told Ziyi that if he wants to be Elder Wu, he only needs to say a word to me. I will definitely not fight with him.
Very good.
Xiao Hua believes that Ziyi can say such words.
That's the reason why I came here.
Ming continues, however, the fact that the soulfall lamp cannot be lit has always been a secret of our Hutu stronghold. Even many elders Wu and Ji Man do not know about it. After all, this soulfall lamp is a precious treasure, and is usually enshrined in the ancestral hall.
Only I knew that when I had to light the soulfall lamp, I begged Elder Wu to go to the ancestral hall to take it out. It was only then that I realized that something was wrong.
How is that possible? Fairy Xianxia is puzzled. From what you said, this soulfall lamp has been damaged for thousands of years. How can so many elders Wu and Ji Man not know about it? Whether the ancestors know or not, I don't know. Ming smiles mysteriously, but the current elders Wu and Ji Man definitely do not know about it. Otherwise, they would not have urged me to light up the soulfall lamp. As for the fact that the soulfall lamp has been damaged for thousands of years, it is recorded in the soulfall lamp. When I got it, I knew about it. But how it was damaged, and who damaged it, there is no explanation. The fact that the soulfall lamp cannot be lit. I have kept it a secret for a long time, and now it has come to a point where I can no longer keep it a secret. Besides, if the other descendants know about this, I'm afraid there will be a dispute in our Hutu stronghold. Now that there is a great change in Meng Mountains, it is no different from a great disaster to our Hutu stronghold. So, I have to be careful. Ming finally got to the point. Hiss. After hearing Ming's words, Xiao Hua suddenly understood the importance of the soulfall lamp. At the same time, his heart suddenly felt heavy. When Midnight gave him the storage bag that day, he didn't just give him Qixin, but also the safety of the Hutu stronghold.
Karma.
In an instant, the space around Xiao Hua trembled again. His nascent divinity, which was comprehending the hand of karma, felt as if it was struck by lightning. An indescribable mystery was transmitted into his mind. Ming did not notice Xiao Hua's abnormality and continued. In the early years, I also thought of all kinds of ways to light up the soulfall lamp, and I even paid a heavy price. Later, I had no choice but to ask Wu Ling for help. I visited Master Ku Qin 3 times, hoping that he could help. However, I heard that Master still has 2 more chances to refine a soul treasure, so I took the risk to visit him. I didn't expect. Master Ku Qin met Ming's apologetic gaze and did not care.
On his ugly face, the expression in his eyes was very calm.
Of course, Master. Ming smiled again. I know that Master will consume your life essence because of this, and I have been trying my best to find a way to make up for it all these years. Coincidentally, when Ziyi went to Sky Patrol City, not only did he get to know a confidant like young Master Xiao, but he also brought back a spiritual medicine from the Tao sect. This spiritual medicine should be useful to Master. As he spoke, Ming took out a jade box from the brocade bag at his waist and offered it with both hands. However, this is the last time Master will refine a soul treasure, and your life essence has been overdrawn. I don't know if this thing is still useful? Master Ku Qin was surprised. He reached out and took the jade box. After opening it and looking at it, he asked, What kind of medicinal pill is this? It looks a little strange. Chapter 2859. This is the mysterious rejuvenation pill of the Tao sect. Ziyi only got 3 of them from the Sky Patrol City.
I've already given one of them to Elder Wu.
After Elder Wu took it, he regained his youth and looked even younger than me. Ming smiled. I'll give this rejuvenation pill to you.
Perhaps it can offset the loss of life essence from refining a spirit treasure.
There's such a miraculous pill in this world?
Master Ku Qin was shocked.
I wonder which immortal could refine such a miraculous pill? As he spoke, Master Ku Qin's body flashed with an obscure fluctuation. The space within a few feet of him was slightly distorted. The rejuvenation pill in his hand flew into the air,
and the pill's shadow flickered in and out of existence. After waiting for half a cup of tea's worth of time, a violent fluctuation rippled out from the surroundings of the rejuvenation pill.
An indescribable hurricane swept through the entire cave. This hurricane was different from the usual wind.
Once it was formed, it immediately rushed in all directions, seeping into the walls of the cave and blowing out of the cave. "Hiss," Master Kachin gasped.
After the hurricane, he looked at the traces of green lines on the mountain walls. His face was filled with surprise and disbelief. He whispered, "Not bad, this miraculous pill is actually filled with the power of thunder. This power of life can replenish the life essence I use to refine a spirit treasure. After taking this pill, I can refine a spirit treasure again."
"Good," Ziming clapped his hands and said. "If that's the case, I can rest assured."
"Thank you, Ziming."
Although Master Kuchin's temperament was outstanding and he did not care about life and death, this was life and death after all.
Since he could survive, he was happy. "This is what I'll do."
Ziming beamed with joy and said, "Master, do you want to take it now or after repairing the lost soul lamp?"
"This."
Grandmaster Kuchin pondered for a moment, then smiled. "This immortal pill contains the power of thunder. Although it can replenish life essence, the power of thunder is the opposite of my secret soul cultivation method. If this old man takes it now, I don't know how long it will take for the lamp to be repaired. It's not too late to take it after repairing the lost soul lamp."
"Grandmaster, please weigh the pros and cons yourself."
Ziming naturally knew the severity of the situation and nodded with a smile.
Putting away the rejuvenation pill, Grandmaster Kuchin raised her head again. Outside the cave stood a dozen or so soul warriors of different heights.
It was impossible to see the expressions of these soul warriors in the dark.
Grandmaster Kuchin ordered Qingming to come in. Smiling, Qingming explained the situation to Qingming. Finally, a smile appeared on Qingming's face. Bowing to Ziming and the others, he happily led his disciples away. The Dao sect's spells are indeed profound. Grandmaster Kuchin also relaxed when she saw that all the disciples had left in satisfaction.
She was once again in a leisurely mood as she sighed and said, "The rise of the Dao sect is not without reason."
"Hee, Master."
Ziming's face lit up as he said, "Junior wanted to give Grandmaster the rejuvenation pill, but I didn't expect that Huta Great God would send this alchemist here as well. I guess Huta Great God must have seen Grandmaster's magnanimity and knew how much Grandmaster had done for Meng Mountains. That's why she sent this alchemist here to save Grandmaster's life."
"Oh?" Grandmaster Kuchin was shocked. She hurriedly stood up from her seat and looked around.
She walked toward Xiaohua and bowed. "Immortal Master Xiao, please accept my bow."
Who would have thought that after Grandmaster Kuchin bowed, Xiaohua only looked at her indifferently.
He did not move at all, as if he was being extremely rude.
"Xiaohua." Fairy Xianxia was shocked.
She looked at Xiaohua's half-smiling face and hurriedly said to Grandmaster Kuchin, "Grandmaster, Xiaohua probably had some enlightenment just now. Right now he is." But before Fairy Xianxia could finish, Xiaohua's eyes moved slightly. Countless stars flashed in his eyes. In this somewhat dark cave, it was extremely obvious. Grandmaster Kuchin was facing Xiaohua at this moment. Hearing Fairy Xiaoxia's reminder, she raised her head in surprise. When her gaze landed on Xiaohua's eyes, she was even more shocked.
She was stunned for a moment.
Then, she shuddered and a trace of horror flashed in her eyes.
At this moment, Xiaohua seemed as if he had just woken up from a dream.
He looked at Grandmaster Kuchin strangely. "Cough cough," Fairy Xianxia hurriedly said. "Xiaohua, Grandmaster Kuchin is thanking you."
"Thanking me? Thanking me for what?"
Xiaohua scratched his head in confusion. "Hee, young Master Xiao, about the matter of the rejuvenation pill." Ziming laughed. "This concubine has already given the rejuvenation pill that Zai obtained from young Master to Grandmaster.
Young Master Xiao has hidden it from Zai for a long time. However, this matter cannot be scrutinized. Zai has already secretly told this concubine.
He suspects that you are that mysterious alchemy Grandmaster.
You won't deny it, right? Rejuvenation pill? Alchemy Grandmaster?"
Hearing this, Li Zongbao narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiaohua thoughtfully. Hee, if it was someone else, this little one would not admit it even if he was beaten to death." Xiaohua laughed. However, facing Grandmaster Kuchin, even if this little one was beaten to death, he would still admit it.
At this moment, Grandmaster Kuchin seemed to have returned to normal. There was a faint smile on her face. She stood in front of Xiaohua and patiently listened to his words. Although Grandmaster Kuchin's height was only 3/2 of Xiaohua's height, Grandmaster Kuchin did not seem to be uneasy standing there. She was calm and composed.
She truly had the bearing of a Grandmaster. Grandmaster, please. How could Xiaohua dare to let Grandmaster Kuchin bow to him again?
He hurriedly raised his hand and asked Grandmaster Kuchin to turn around.
Master Immortal Xiao, contrary to everyone's expectations, Xiaohua had just opened his mouth when Grandmaster Kuchin bowed again and said, "Many thanks for Master Immortal's guidance."
"Don't." Xiaohua's face turned red.
He hurriedly supported Grandmaster Kuchin and said, "Grandmaster, you are the Grandmaster.
Please don't say that in front of this little one. You are killing this little one's life essence. Even if this little one takes another rejuvenation pill, it won't make up for it."
"Pfft,"
Ziming laughed. However, she also felt a little strange.
When Grandmaster Kuchin thanked Xiaohua and mentioned the effects of Xiaohua's rejuvenation pill, she could understand why she called Xiaohua Master Immortal.
After all, this rejuvenation pill was very rare. She had never heard of a pill that could restore one's youth on Dawn Rain continent. From this point of view, calling Xiaohua Master Immortal was nothing. However, this second time, perhaps others didn't notice, but Ziming heard it clearly. Grandmaster Kuchin actually thanked Xiaohua for his guidance. However, when Ziming thought about Xiaohua's words just now, how could there be any guidance? Besides, Xiaohua was an alchemist, not a tool refiner. How could there be any guidance?
"Come, Master Immortal Xiao, please sit."
Grandmaster Kuchin pulled Xiaohua's hand and insisted that he sit next to her. In fact, in Grandmaster Kuchin's cave, there were only some large stones paved with animal skins. The tea set was also placed on the stone table. There was no order to it. Even if Xiaohua sat next to Grandmaster Kuchin, he was only a little closer to her. However, Xiaohua didn't know how to sit. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Grandmaster, please don't call this little one Master Immortal. This little one can't afford it. Just call me Xiaohua." "Oh, Grandmaster, if you really want to call me that, you can call me Master Xiao."
"Ah?
Master Xiao? You're that Master Xiao?" Hearing Xiaohua's words, both Grandmaster Kuchin and Ziming were stunned. They asked almost at the same time. But then, the expressions on their faces changed. Ziming's face was full of disbelief, but there was also a sudden realization in this disbelief, as if she should have known this long ago. Grandmaster Kuchin's eyes were shining. She looked at Xiaohua with great admiration, then she bowed and said, "Kuchin thanks Master Xiao for your great kindness to the people of the world. If Master Xiao has the ability of an immortal master, please save the people of Meng Mountain from the abyss of suffering." While speaking, Grandmaster Kuchin actually wanted to kneel down and perform the great ceremony of millions of Meng Mountain people.
"Oh no!"
Xiaohua was so proud that he blurted out. His heart was filled with regret. Since Elder Wu of Bai and Stronghold knew that there were good seeds in the 3 kingdoms of cultivators, how could this Grandmaster Kuchin, who cared about the natives, not know? But in the next moment, Xiaohua felt a bit ashamed. This Grandmaster Qin really didn't care about cultivators, soul warriors, or even swordsmen. She actually brought the people of the 3 kingdoms to thank Xiaohua, and then brought the millions of natives of Meng Mountains to thank him. Her breadth of mind was much greater than his. Therefore, Xiaohua hurriedly supported Grandmaster Kuchin and said with a smile, "Grandmaster Kuchin, since Grandmaster believes that I'm Master Xiao, then you must know that I don't like the customs." Chapter 2860. Indeed. After Xiaohua heard this, he nodded and said, "This is also something that I want to discuss with Ziming after rescuing Xiao Mao." "It's all right. Master Qin is here, and young Master Xiao is Zai's good friend. How can Ziming forget Taoist Zhao's contribution?" Ziming smiled and said, "Besides, in my opinion, Taoist Xiao seems to be more reliable than Xiao Mao, right?" Xiaohua thought for a while. Although he didn't trust Ziming too much, with Master Qian by his side, he really admired this master. Seeing Master Qian's smiling face, he reached out his hand and took out a storage bag. He handed it to Ziming and said, "This is the millet seed I got from a deserted island outside the sea. It was planted together with the rice used by the cultivators in the three kingdoms. If the rice seed can be used, then the millet seed can also be used." "Good." Ziming's eyes flashed with surprise. He slowly reached out his hand and took it. When he opened the storage bag, he frowned and said, "Why? Is there only so little? I remember. Ha ha ha, these are seeds. Ziming, they are not for you to eat." Xiaohua laughed. This Ziming was indeed a noble of Hutu village. He probably wasn't familiar with farming. Ziming suddenly understood. He hit his own forehead and said with a smile, "I was wrong." Xiaohua was very familiar with this action. It was exactly the same as what Ziyi did that day. Hee, they are really twins. Xiaohua thought to himself. However, he also lowered his guard against Ziming. Then Xiaohua said, "I still have some of this millet seed. It should be enough for Hutu village and Shebi village. As for the other shaman villages, after the two villages planted this millet seed, they can slowly circulate it to Meng Mountains." "Thank you, young Master Xiao." Ziming understood the meaning of this action. He was really happy. He bowed and said, "With this millet seed, even if I don't have the soul-falling lamp, I'm afraid I can still get the position of G-Man." "No need to thank me," Xiaohua waved his hand slightly. "You are Sister Zai, you can help Xiao Mao. Moreover, with your help, we can plant this millet seed in Meng Mountains. How can I not help you?" "Zai, actually, I should have known that young Master Xiao was Taoist Master Xiao." At this point, Ziming hesitated for a moment before continuing. That day, young Master gave Ziyi a storage pouch. Ziyi remembered young Master's instructions and had his subordinates distribute the seeds to the people of the secular world near the state of Xi. When he came back, he encountered the drought in Meng Mountains. Only then did he remember that you were a good seed of young Master. However, at that time, Zai only saw young Master as a close friend who had built his foundation. He never thought much about it. Zai is really considerate. Xiaohua smiled. "Unfortunately, I didn't know that he was from Meng Mountain, otherwise, I might have been able to give him this seed that day." At this point he watched Ziming carefully put away the storage bag and asked tentatively, "I still have something to ask Miss Ming." Ziming smiled and said, "Young Master Xiao, feel free to speak. What's going on with the Shibai village? Why did Xiao Mao, a pure god of Shibai bloodline, end up in the three kingdoms of cultivation?" Xiaohua had always been puzzled. Even Xiao Mao himself didn't know. This. Ziming was also troubled. She thought for a moment and shook her head slightly. "This? I really don't know. This is the internal affairs of the Shibai village. It should also involve the secret of the witch elder or G-man. I've never been interested in it." "Master, do you know?" Xiaohua asked Master Ni-Qin. Master Ni-Qin also shook her head. "That's strange," Xiaohua said curiously. "Since no one knows, why would Yi Yu, a swordsman, chase after Xiao Mao?" "Yi Yu?" Ziming's eyes turned slightly. She understood a little and said, "This swordsman should be Ji-man's husband, the Fu man of Shibai village. If he chased after Xiao Mao, it would definitely cause internal strife in the Shibai village. Sai, it's very simple. Yi Yu was afraid that Xiao Mao would return to the Shibai village and affect his position. Yes, it would affect Ji-man's position. But, can a swordsman be the Fu man of a witch village?" Xiaohua was puzzled. "Why not?" Ziming smiled and said, "Apart from the witch elder and Ji-man, who must be the descendants of the great gods, the Fu man and Fu woman can be anyone else. Also, as far as I know, in the witch village under the jurisdiction of Huta village, there are many Taoist cultivators who practice soul spells and become Meng Mountain soul warriors. The sword realm is closer to Meng Mountains, so there are more swordsmen." Having said that, Ziming gave Grandmaster Qian a glance and continued, "Actually, without the bloodline of the 12 gods, it is impossible to cultivate the true soul spells of Meng Mountains. What they have cultivated is just the surface of the modified version. They can't understand the essence of the soul spells. As for true soul magics, they have to do with the bloodline, the soul, and the life essence." Master Ni knew what Ziming meant and said, "It's the same for refining soul tools."
Could it be that with the bloodline of the 12 great gods, it's impossible to chant witchcraft incantations and connect the life essence with the soul tools, let alone the refining method?
So that's how it is. Xiaohua understood that the refining of soul tools was related to the Green Seal script. When the refiners of Meng Mountains refined soul tools, they were just like Yun Tingyu of Misty Cloud sect. When they used the Green Seal script, they would immediately age and die. It was better not to learn this kind of refining. From what Taoist Xiao said, it seems that in addition to alchemy, you also know some refining techniques? Master Ni said, "May I have the honor of asking Taoist Xiao to repair this soul-falling lamp with me?" Hearing Master Ni's invitation, not only was Xiaohua surprised, even Ziming was a little stunned. After all, Xiaohua was a cultivator. Although Master Ni didn't see the difference between cultivators and soul warriors, but the refining of soul tools was a secret of Meng Mountains. How could it be shown to others? However, Ziming soon realized something. Didn't he just say it? Without the bloodline of the 12 great gods, one couldn't control the true soul spells. Even if Xiaohua saw the refining method, he couldn't practice it, right? Even if he saw it, what could he do? It's my honor to be favored by Master Ni and be able to observe Master Ni's refining technique. After Xiaohua was surprised, he beamed with joy. He knew the art of soul cultivation. Although this art of soul cultivation was just a minor detail in the eyes of Ziming and Master Ni, it was absolutely possible for him to gain some benefits from Master Ni's refining technique. All right, Taoist Xiao, please go back and rest. 3 days later, I will ask Taoist Xiao to refine with me. Master Ni nodded and said, "Thank you, Master." Xiaohua stood up. When he was about to leave, he suddenly remembered something and asked casually, "Master Ni, can you repair or refine a sorcerer puppet?" Sorcerer puppet? Master Ni was stunned, then a wry smile appeared on her face. I didn't expect Taoist Xiao to know the name of sorcerer puppet of Meng Mountains. However, this sorcerer puppet is refined with all the life of a sorcerer, and it can only be refined once in a sorcerer's life. Not to mention that my soul cultivation has not reached such a level, and I am not a sorcerer. The secret method of refining sorcerer puppet has long been lost in Meng Mountains. If you want to truly refine it, I'm afraid you can only find it in the depths of Meng Mountains, where those sorcerers have not been in the world for a long time, right? What about Meng Mountains? Xiaohua asked in a natural manner. I don't know. Master Ni laughed. Even the sorcerer and G-man of Huta village and Shibai village don't know. Then Master Ni stood up, waved her hand and said, "Even the sorcerer villages of the descendants of the 12 great gods don't know." Why? Xiaohua was puzzled. The vastness of this world is far beyond your imagination. The wonders of this world are also far beyond your imagination. So what if you know? So what if you don't know? When it's time for you to know, you'll know. When it's time for you to know, even if you want to know, you can't know. Master Ni said as she walked away, leaving Ziming and the other guests in the cave. Her voice once again traveled far in the darkness. When it's time for you to know, you'll know. When it's time for you to know, even if you want to know, you can't know. These words echoed in the valley for a long time. Master, you're right. Ziming clapped his hands and praised. You've enlightened me. Now that Master has left, what should we do? Xiaohua smiled. Are we supposed to meditate here? Why not? Ziming also smiled. When it's time for you to meditate, you can meditate anywhere. When it's time for you to meditate, even if you want to meditate, there's no place for you to meditate. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed. This night was not wasted. Of course, before long, Qingming and the other disciples of Master Ni came one after another. They led the guests out and arranged for them to rest in a quiet room that was similar to a cave. Xiaohua naturally didn't stay with Fairy Xianxia. After sending off his disciple, Xiaohua took out the newly refined jade talismans and placed them all around the cave. As Xiaohua formed a hand seal, the simple capital sky star array was set up with a faint flicker of light. This jade talisman was indeed different from a spiritual talisman. Not only did it consume less spiritual power, but the tightness and concealment of the formation were also greatly increased.
However, the capital star formation that was set up using a jade talisman absorbed too much spiritual energy from the heavens and the earth at the beginning.
Fortunately, the mountain wind whistled in the valley, so these movements did not attract the attention of others.
Very good.
Xiao Hua released his Buddhist awareness and checked the capital star array. He was very satisfied.
Although he had refined it in a hurry and only had a few dozen talismans, this array was comparable to the array activated by the 100 spiritual talismans that he had given to Xianxia.
When he thought of Xianxia, her beautiful smile involuntarily appeared in his mind. Chapter 2861.
Damn it, I'm afraid I won't be able to get rid of this guy in the future. Xiao Hua shook his head unhappily.
It looked like he was trying his best to throw this beauty out of his mind. Sigh, forget it. Maybe I've been hit by some secret technique of Jianghu. Xiao Hua found an excuse for himself. When my magic power is strong enough, I'll naturally be able to break it. Then, Xiao Hua looked around, took out a futon from his dimension, and sat down cross-legged. He was about to use the sun-shrouding art to nourish his divine sense, but just as he was about to activate the sun-shrouding art, Xiao Hua stopped. He clapped his hand and took out 3 bone boxes from his dimension. This bone box was given to Xiao Mao by Ji Man in order to show his loyalty back in by An Stronghold. Xiao Mao then gave it to Xiao Hua. According to Ji Man, they hadn't given any treasures to Shibai village for a long time. These 3 bone boxes were the most precious of treasures. Of course, from Ji Man's cautious attitude that day, Xiao Hua knew that the things inside were definitely not ordinary. If Xiao Hua hadn't heard Master Qin Qin and Zi Ming talking about how the millions of cultivators in Meng Mountains were all low-level soul warriors, he might not have remembered these useless treasures of Meng Mountains. Didn't Xiao Hua start cultivating the soul cultivation method that cultivators passed on to him in the language of Dao sect? Although Xiao Hua later learned the true meaning of cultivating the 9 heavens spirit origin from the jade slips of other soul cultivators, and his nascent divinity was now dancing with the little white dragon's soul, and his soul cultivation technique was gradually reaching the level of samadhi. But, this soul cultivation technique was still a low-level, unorthodox technique. Perhaps I can get some benefits from these 3 treasures? Xiao Hua's heart was full of expectations. However, when Xiao Hua opened the 3 bone boxes and saw the 3 treasures with his own eyes, he still smiled bitterly even though he was somewhat prepared. Inside the first bone box was a palm-sized bone staff. It was flat and somewhat slender. There was a pure white luster on it and it was very smooth to the touch. It was somewhat similar to the jade stones seen in the Dao sect. However, this bone staff looked just like a bone staff. There wasn't a trace of strange fluctuation. Even when Xiao Hua released his soul strands, he didn't see any reaction. This made Xiao Hua smack his lips. He almost thought of using this bone staff to coax Junior Wu Qing. The thing inside the second bone box could be seen at a glance. It was a bone snake. It was unknown what kind of method was used to condense the tiny bone particles that were smaller than a grain of corn together to form a small snake that was as thick as a thumb and more than a foot long. This small snake was coiled inside the bone box. The small snake's head was slightly tilted up and its eyes were blank. Although it was also formed by 2 even smaller bone particles, there was no divine light. It was no different from a corpse. Xiao Hua used his fingers to fiddle with the bone snake a few times. It was similarly ice-cold to the touch, and a faint chill came from this coldness. This chill penetrated Xiao Hua's skin and even seeped into his soul. Hiss, this thing is powerful. Xiao Hua was happy. He knew that this bone snake had some background. However, just as this joy surged into his heart, he was suddenly startled. He thought of the day when Xiao Mao met Elder Wu of Bai and Stronghold. Elder Wu used a soul armament to create a statue of God Bai to test Xiao Mao's authenticity. That statue's ears. Were there not 2 jade snakes hanging from it? Ah, this item is not fated to be with this young master. Xiao Hua immediately put the bone snake into the bone box. He knew that this item was used by the descendant of God Bai, and he couldn't steal it. It was better to return it to Xiao Mao. The item in the 3rd bone box was even more puzzling to Xiao Hua. This was also a soul armament made from white bones. It was a ball about the size of a fist. Of course, rather than calling it a ball, it was more accurate to call it a skeleton. This skeleton wasn't a complete skeleton.
Like the bone snake, it was made up of millions of tiny particles of bone. These particles of bone seemed to be condensed into a ball, but the skeleton was faintly discernible in and out of this ball of bone.
This wasn't something that Xiaohua found strange. What Xiaohua found strange was that underneath the bone particles of the skeleton, there wasn't an empty space. Instead, there was another layer of bone particles. This layer of bone particles seemed to be the same as the outer layer of bone particles. Even below the second layer, there were still bone particles. When Xiaohua scanned it with his Buddhist sense, he realized that this soul armament had 18 layers. At the very core, the hole formed by the bone particles was only the size of a soybean. Good heavens! Soul cultivator items are really strange. Xiaohua picked up the bone ball from the bone box and tossed it up and down a few times. The bone ball was abnormally light, as if it didn't have any weight at all. His Buddhist sense only contained the bone particles, so there was no reaction. Even when Xiaohua released his soul strands, the bone ball didn't move like the previous soul armament toad. This made Xiaohua even more happy. That soul armament toad was quite useful when fighting against sword cultivators, but when it came into contact with a soul warrior, it immediately turned to ashes. It was clearly a low-level item that couldn't be any lower. But this item didn't have any reaction from the soul strands. Xiaohua knew that this was an extremely powerful item. What Xiaohua needed to do was to find out how to use this item. Should I ask Master Kuchin? Xiaohua's hand casually tossed the bone ball as he thought to himself. The bone particles of the bone ball gradually shook up and down in the air. A fist-sized skeleton gradually appeared. In the dark night, Xiaohua's appearance became even more terrifying. Let's talk about it after I repair the soul-falling lamp. Xiaohua made up his mind. Since this item belongs to this young master, then it belongs to this young master. Xiao Mao didn't say anything, so what can the others say? Could it be that Master Kuchin wants to take this treasure away? Oh. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's face showed a puzzled expression. This Master Kuchin is also strange. Why did she suddenly call me Immortal Master? If it weren't for the fact that he called me Immortal Master and made my heart beat wildly, how could I have casually mentioned Taoist Zhao's name? Later on, Master Kuchin's behavior was also somewhat strange. The words she said were very puzzling. She even asked me to observe her repairing the soul-falling lamp? This was truly an inconceivable matter. But in the end, she actually sang and left. It was quite disrespectful. Forget it, forget it. She is a master craftsman of Meng Mountain. Naturally, she has an extraordinary bearing. Why should I be so serious with her? In the future, I still have to ask her about how soul cultivators craft tools. I also have to ask her about the use of this bone ball. Smiling is the right way to go. In the end, Xiaohua stopped thinking. His eyes swept around, and his hands trembled. Damn it, this is really scary. How did it turn into a big skeleton? That's right, the bone ball in Xiaohua's hand had already turned into a skeleton bigger than a fist. Those empty eyes were looking at Xiaohua, and those white teeth were between Xiaohua's fingers. Let this young master take a look again. Xiaohua opened his transcendence vision. Sure enough, he could see a skeleton with his transcendence vision. What about this? Xiaohua took out the bone snake and the bone staff. In his transcendence vision, the bone snake naturally couldn't see anything. But the bone staff had a square shape, and there were traces of green light in it. Green seal script? Xiaohua looked at the familiar green light, and his heart shook. He retrieved the bone snake and the bone ball, and threw the bone staff into the air. Hundreds of soul threads stretched out, wrapped around the bone staff, and dragged it toward the center of his eyebrows. This drag didn't matter, but Xiaohua immediately felt something different. This bone staff seemed to be extremely heavy, and his soul threads couldn't drag it at all. There's hope, Xiaohua wasn't surprised but happy. He immediately released more soul threads. However, in the soul threads, the bone staff only moved a little. It was like a mountain, majestic and unmoving. This is troublesome. Xiaohua's right hand's index finger and middle finger flicked up and down on his chin. He stared at the bone staff and thought for a moment. Then, he stretched out his hand, placed the bone staff between his brows, and pulled the soul threads inside. After using a Herculean effort, Xiaohua's forehead only felt the coldness of the bone staff. But the bone staff couldn't feel his burning heart, and simply ignored him. Damn it, this young master is going to waste time with you. Xiaohua was a little angry. This young master has encountered so many magic tools, magic treasures, and even spirit tools. Which one of them wasn't obedient to this young master? This young master doesn't believe that he can't subdue you. As he spoke, Xiaohua's mind spun rapidly. He really didn't have many soul techniques. Other than the cultivation method of the 9 heavens of spirit origin, these soul threads, and those green seal scripts, he didn't have any other soul techniques. Right, this young master also has a primordial spirit that cultivates soul techniques. Xiaohua slapped his forehead, and his mind entered the mysterious dark clouds. He saw that in the Qing heaven, the human figure that seemed to be formed from a water bubble was swaying. Countless soul strands were dancing all the time, and mysterious waves of light were overflowing in the entire Qing heaven. Beside the human figure, little white dragon's soul seemed to be a little bigger, but it still leaned against the human primordial spirit. Its body was also dancing with strange waves of light. These waves of light were different from the waves of light of Xiaohua's primordial spirit. However, occasionally, when the waves of light collided with each other, it would affect each other's own waves of light. Thus, the waves of light emitted would also have extremely subtle changes. Not bad. Xiaohua slightly sized up this height. It was already much faster than when he was in the Ring of Spirit Origin. Could it be that this 9 heavens of spirit origin is easier to cultivate to the end? However, this was only Xiaohua's guess. There were no records in the cultivation method. When Xiaohua called out his primordial spirit, he couldn't help but be a little dazed. At this time, his primordial spirit appeared in the cave. Layers of green brilliance appeared around the primordial spirit, and the entire primordial spirit was wrapped up. And this green brilliance was precisely the appearance of a human figure. The entire primordial spirit was lively, just like a small person. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.